5A.
The City Council for the City of Rollingwood will come to order Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 at 7 o'clock p.m. and we will begin with roll call.
Brooke Brown.
Alec Robinson.
Kevin Glasheen.
Bill McDuffie.
Sarah Hudson.
Gavin Massengill being a quorum present. We will move on to public comment. Anyone wishing to make comments not on the agenda? All right. With that, we will move to agenda item number 2, the Mayor's State of the City address. Thank you, Council, for sticking with me last month and delaying this from what was going to be my State of the City last month, but I wanted to be able to have our new city administrator here. So I will just say that it's an honor, first of all, to report to you this evening for what has kind of become an annual discussion between myself and you on behalf of the city residents, so that the residents can kind of get a sense of what the state of our city is. And I'm proud to say the words that mark every good State of the Union or State of the City, and I'm happy to report that the state of the City of Rollingwood is strong. Through diligent efforts, collaboration, and what I think is a clear vision for our future, Rollingwood continues to thrive as a vibrant and resilient community. And I want to highlight just a few of the major achievements that I think reflect our commitment to maintaining excellence in public service and infrastructure and community engagement. And I'll start with sort of the topic of financial stability and infrastructure. I'm happy to remind everyone here, I know the council knows, but certainly want to put it on the record, that we, in the past 12 months, once again, moved or affirmed our AA+ bond rating for the city, demonstrating a very strong financial responsibility and budget management. That has not always been the case for the City of Rollingwood. We were able to move to that AA rating several years ago, and we continue to maintain it this year in our S&P interview. It seems like more than a year ago now, but I want to remind you it was within the last 12 months that we successfully completed our $1.4 million bond sale to support our vital infrastructure projects, and we got a very favorable interest rate on that, as council recalls, and that is in large part because of that AA bond rating. In the last 12 months, we also began construction of our water CIP packages 1 through 4, and to include 2 of our major drainage projects that this council will recall, both of which have been on the drawing board for one of them nearly 10 years now, the other 6 to 8 years. So we made real progress on those 2 items as well as part of that water CIP packages. With the leadership of the council, we advanced the installation of our Google Fiber, inviting Google in to provide greater service to our residents. With the phase 1 was complete and remaining work scheduled before the final paving, which will happen at the end of 2025. Our Public Works Department, our Development Services Department, and our Utility Billing Department all worked collectively in the past 12 months to complete our citywide meter swap. We modernized our water system with electronic water meters, and this will save countless hours, man hours, on our end, woman hours, on our end, with how we had previously done that water meter reading. And the water monitoring itself will be a picture of efficiency for us as we have now transitioned to the EyeOnWater electronic monitoring system, which council remembers. On the financial and administrative front, again, excellent news. We maintained our fund balance with the good work of the council and through our budget making process. A fund balance well in excess of the 6-month reserve, which we strive for each year. We also completed our successful audit this year with not a single identified problem, which in my memory is the first time we've ever been able to accomplish that, in large part because of the great work of our staff, and again, affirming the effectiveness of our financial practices. On the public safety and city services front, we hired this year a new police administrative coordinator and 2 new officers in our police force. We continue to strive and make great headway, as we'll hear about later tonight, too, on the recruitment front, as we continue to positively address the challenges that all police departments have in the nation. Our police department is doing an excellent job when it comes to the management of their force. We also implemented the e-citations in our police and judicial sections of our departments. Very pleased to be modernizing that system so that we can also go to e-citations, which is something that we've never had before. And then the Know Before You Go public safety campaign that the police department and the chief has spearheaded. This year also we held our first VIN etching event, you may recall, in the park. Hopefully we'll have greater and greater success and participation in that in the years going forward. We had other positive movement in working with TxDOT. I know a number of you probably noticed the guardrails on BK Road. Maybe you wondered how that came to be, and that was because of our good work that our staff did with TxDOT in coordinating that dangerous, and our police department and keeping up so that we had a good story to tell TxDOT so that they didn't have a whole lot of reason to not come and do those guardrails. Continue to maintain our TxDOT participation, also working with CTRMA over the past year through numerous work groups and communication with them on the MOPAC South project. Our public works and community maintenance, in my opinion, is at an all-time positive place and great work that they've been doing. As you know, and we got a report last month, a completion of the tree trimming along our city roadways. And because of the good work that this council did in putting significant dollar amounts toward that tree trimming line item, we were also able to take the excess funds and begin a project that we've talked about for many years, which is the fire prevention in some of our various right-of-ways and areas that the city owns. And we will continue to try to do that in the year looking forward. We maintained our city planters and gardens, and we, for the first time ever, began doing some additional seeding around the area so that we have great green space in some of the areas that have been neglected over the years. And we'll continue to do that sort of beautification as we move forward. Small things, but they make a big difference when we're driving around the city. We worked collaboratively with the Parks Commission, our staff did, and the Public Works Department, as well as the local volunteers from the Women's Club, extending the Pavilion Foundation. We poured the concrete there on the pavilion and made some needed improvements to the pavilion area. And then for the first time ever, you may recall, council, this past year we engaged in our first long-term planning for our street maintenance. We did hired the engineering firm to look at all of our streets in the past year and really take a deep dive on the state of those streets, and then began to prioritize how to begin moving that maintenance into a rolling 5-year maintenance program, something that we've never done in the city before. I think these accomplishments are just reflect just a few of the many things, and the dedication to responsible growth, the safety and the transparency that we strive for. And I think as we move forward, we're all committed to enhancing the quality of life for all of our residents and ensuring Rollingwood remains a model of progress and of community spirit. I'm super excited about the year that lies in front of us. I think I would be remiss somewhat if I did not mention our previous city administrator, Ashley Wayman. As we miss her, but we're excited for her new opportunities as she helped our staff work through a number of these accomplishments that we had in the past year. And then her final swan song as she left us was to spearhead the effort to look for her replacement. And I'm pleased to report that she did as good a job at that as she did on everything else. And with that, we want to, with this address, welcome Alan Thomas to the fold and to the Rollingwood family. He is our new city administrator. I know most of you in this room have had a chance to meet him. I'm so impressed so far with Alan. I think he's going to be an excellent addition to this team. His depth of knowledge and experience is truly remarkable. And I think that I think it's safe to say that we would not have been able to recruit a candidate like Alan if it weren't for the good work that this council and previous councils have done to put the city of Rollingwood on the map, and to really show that we have our business together here in the city of Rollingwood. I think it's a testament in and of itself that we were able to get Alan to come join the team here at Rollingwood. The next 12 months, I'm excited about. I'm looking forward to, not just because I'll be out of the legislative session by then, but also I think we have some great work still ahead of us, and I'm looking forward to continuing that work with this council and with the residents of Rollingwood. I anticipate that we will, in that time frame, be able to complete our water CIP packages 1 through 4. I think that will be a real testament to the commitment of this community to our infrastructure and our infrastructure needs. I'm looking forward to wrapping that up. And when we do wrap that up, we'll quickly move into the final phase of that will include some street paving and maintenance and operation of our streets to recover some of the areas that have been that we've had to do the construction in and around. And so we'll move quickly into that street paving, maintenance, and operation long-term plan that we engaged in here in 2025 and in 2024. The tree trimming, again, in our next budget cycle, we will come back to you with some tree trimming budget line items that I would ask you to look favorably upon. And when we do continue to complete the tree trimming on our streets and roadways, we'll also take the excess dollars, just as we've done this previous year, and continue our fire prevention and maintenance in the coming year. So looking forward to that. And then probably the biggest issue that we'll have on our plate after we do wrap up the water CIP projects will be to quickly move into our phase 2 of our bond approval. If you'll recall, council and residents, the phase 2 of that bond will be the refurbishment of the city hall and the addition of some public safety space so that we can share that space with, also give our police department some needed room to grow, and also share that space with our ESD 9, which is our fire department and EMS service. Really looking forward to starting that work as we begin to wrap up the CIP and move into that next phase. Also, I'd like to just lay out that we'll continue a positive focus on the beautification of Rollingwood, an issue, again, that I've brought up and that we've engaged in the last year or two, but we'll continue to do smaller projects around the community to increase our beautification, and then we'll try to do some slightly larger projects as well that I think everyone will be very excited about, and can be a real positive team building and community building endeavor for us going forward. One of which is actually on the agenda to bring back up with council tonight, and I look forward to more issues and projects like that as we move forward in the next year. I hope, generally speaking, that you are as pleased with our progress in Rollingwood as I am. You know, I think it's easy for us to forget the things that we have going for us here in Rollingwood and how great it is to live in Rollingwood. It is truly, life is good in the wood. And if you, and with your help, I think we'll continue to support that engagement. And I do think that the future of Rollingwood looks bright. So thank you all for your work. Thank you, community, for your engagement and your participation. And I look forward to reporting back to you in a year from now.
Thank you.
And with that, we will move on to agenda item number 3, Police Chief presentation regarding department recruitment efforts. Chief?
Good evening. I just wanted to update you guys as far as our recruiting efforts so far. So we did provide a conditional job offer this week. So that applicant will be going through the psychological, the drug testing and things like that this week or this coming week. And then after that, we'll bring them on board. We do currently have a cadet in our background process as well. And I have talked with CapCog, who is going to hold us a space as this applicant does look promising. So with that being said, we just have a, excuse me, a deadline date of May 15th to let CapCog know that we're moving in that direction with the start date of June 23rd. So we're looking good on the cadet side as well. We have made contact with several academies. We've made contact with ACOG in San Antonio, Central Texas College in Killeen to kind of broaden our reach a little bit. So we're just pinning down some dates so that way we can make some in-person recruiting at those locations. And then we also have started making contact with like academies in the Metroplex area and things like that, that we might not be able to visit them in person, but we want to put our recruiting flyers within their academies. To just, like I said, just kind of broaden our scope a little bit outside of Central Texas. So we're making some good headway. We also are in the discussions on creating a new recruiting video. We're trying to modernize everything and simplify our hiring process. So we've made some different changes as far as like our application process, where we do make contact with you as soon as you actually turn in your application, and then we make contact with you several times, where usually we would just provide you the documentation, wait for you to return it. So we created a little bit more of that correspondence, and it seems to be kind of working out for us. Like I said, and then our recruiting video, what we're wanting to do is capitalize on just the work-life balance that we do provide here in the city of Rollingwood, as well as working for the great department. So we got some good things on the horizon, and I'll keep y'all up to date too, as far as like how this whole cadet thing kind of shakes out. And we also, the good thing is too, is we did make contact with CapCog last month. I don't know if you saw in the chief's report. And so we do have several applications out with current cadets as well. So we're hoping to maybe get some feedback on that aspect. So we're looking good as far as some applications going out there. So
Great. Thank you, Chief.
No
And if you
problem.
would just keep us updated. I know you and I will talk about it, but let's remind me to put it on the agenda so that we keep council updated
For sure.
as well.
sure.
Council, any questions for Chief?
No, I just want to say thanks for all your effort to
Yes.
increase recruiting efforts, and especially like, glad to hear y'all making contact immediately. It shows like a lot of initiative in
Right.
trying to make things work better.
And that's the thing, is like we try to like look internally, like what else can we do as far as internally to make sure that we hear you, we see you, and we want you to come here. And that's why it's like, okay, let's change our process a little bit. But I don't think we can also be here too without saying thank you for your support with the discretionary funds, and also increasing the salaries. And so that helps put us in a marketable situation. So again, I said, as far as I go, I appreciate your efforts on that aspect and your support, so.
And Chief, we did talk about it a little bit last month, but just to reiterate too, we want to maintain a high bar with our, not only our recruitment, but our actual hiring process. So there's a pretty extensive vetting process that we put officer candidates through, because we don't want to just put anyone on our streets.
That is correct. I mean, we have received applications, but it's not somebody that we wanted to put out here. So, like I said, I have had discussions department-wide on, hey, look, this is kind of what we're dealing with, and everybody's in agreement. We don't want to bring somebody, we're a small agency, and bringing the wrong person into our agency creates a cancer as well. So we decided that we would rather be short-staffed than bring any wrong person into the agency. And like I said, and I don't want any liability on or put somebody in your home that we don't support, so.
And I have learned through the last few years too, your community of law enforcement is a small community, so you can vet them on paper, but there's also calls that get made and conversations that get had to know why candidates may be available,
Correct.
and so that's an important component to it
That is correct.
as well. So
So,
great. Thank you again, Chief.
Thank you.
no problem. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. Happy to take a motion.
Move approval of the consent agenda?
You have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. McDuffie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to the regular agenda, agenda item number 7, update and discussion on a proposed beautification project at the corner of Rollingwood Drive and Wallace Drive. So there's not a lot in your packet tonight, council. That is by design. This is my agenda item that I wanted to bring to you to re-socialize the item with you. If you'll recall, back in during our budget season, we had a number of discussions with council about the possibility of making some improvements to that corner there at Rollingwood Drive and Wallace. We actually put some dollars into the budget for a while. It ended up coming out of the budget after we did our exceptional items, and then that discussion sort of got moved to RCDC. I think at the time, the general consensus of council was that we would be interested in doing some sort of joint project at some point, but needed to have more clarity from the pool, needed to have more clarity on what it might look like and that sort of thing. I'm pleased to report that perhaps as an outgrowth of some of those discussions, but also others who noticed that corner and noticed that there was some needed improvements and beautification that should happen, some folks from the Rollingwood Women's Club started thinking about that and actually gave it a lot of thought, contacted me. I encouraged them to visit among the Rollingwood Women's Club and see if it was a project that they were truly interested in, to give that a little bit more context as to what they might want that to look like, and then also encourage them to also visit with the pool board and visit with that entity to see if there was some interest as well. Pleased to report, I think that there is interest, broad interest, not only with the Rollingwood Women's Club, but also with the pool board. There have been a number of discussions that have occurred. I think Alex maybe has even jotted a few things down on paper and done some sketches. Just from what I know about it, I'm really excited to see where it goes. Again, I don't think that this would be, it doesn't sound like it would be a huge project, but I think it would be a really nicely done project that probably the city could share some cost in it. I think the pool maybe could share some cost in it. I think the Rollingwood Women's Club might also adopt it as a project that they would share some cost in. So that is just the refresher on the issue. I would encourage council by action to send the issue to RCDC and to the Parks Commission for some additional dialogue with those who have sort of spearheaded this with the Rollingwood Women's Club. Try to get a sense from them on what they're thinking, what it might look like, get some more clarity from them on their discussions that they've had with the pool board, and then have the Park Commission and the RCDC sort of report back to us for next steps and what their recommendations might be. That's my report.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Happy to take a motion?
Okay, make a
Yeah,
motion.
you can ask me questions, but I've just said everything I know. So.
We just said
Make a
update
motion.
and discussion.
Oh, it did? Okay, well, it's not posted for action, so,
Oh.
but they can Park Commission can put things on their own agenda, RCDC can put things on their own agenda. This is my notice to you that I'm going to encourage them to do that and have the dialogue that I just mentioned to you. So if you have any problems with that, speak now, or know that it's probably going to go on those two agendas to come back to us. So, all right.
Good job.
Great. Good? All right. I did email them this morning and say it's going to be a little anticlimactic tonight because we're just going to try to send it off to have some more dialogue. But I did call you by name, Alex, so thank you. I know that you've been helping everyone, and I have seen some of those renderings, and I'm really excited about some of the thought process going on there. So look forward to hearing back about it. And if you would, Michaela and Alan, just remind me that we'll help facilitate RCDC and park discussions on this. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, discussion and possible action on a recommendation from the Utility Commission to update the utility bill appeals policy. And Alan, do you want to give us an update? This is your debut on the mic. So.
Sure, I certainly can. We also have the utility billing manager here to support me if I start saying anything incorrect. No, so the Utility Commission met shortly after I arrived here, and they were following up on something they've been speaking about for a while, updating the leak adjustment policy and the appeals process. So the motion that they had was to amend the leak adjustment so that before you're even eligible to receive a leak adjustment or be considered for one, you must be registered with Ion Water and signed up for leak adjustments as well. Now you can realize that you have, leak alerts. Now you can realize you have a leak and then sign up for Ion Water and the leak alerts, and then you are eligible to get the leak adjustment for that. But it's to try to encourage people to be more proactive in the use of their water, because at the moment there are a number of accounts across the city that are showing small amounts of leakage even as we speak. And so what we'd like is those residents to have the leak alerts so they can just not waste their own money or have to come and go ask for our money to help offset a larger leak. And so the policy in front of you there, it shows the red line copy and then a clean copy of what they're proposing to adopt.
Any questions for Alan? Any questions for Veronica?
Also in that meeting, if I'm not mistaken, Veronica, you said that you actually proactively look at people's water usage and try to notify citizenry if you suspect they may have a leak, rather than them getting a big surprise at the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I'll go through it on a daily basis. When I come in, I start looking at the beacon, and I'll look at the reports to see who has continuous water usage. When it's very high, I do send them an email letting them know how much is consuming per hour, and I'll even send a graph attached to the email and let them know that we are in water restriction stage 2, and also they can register for the Ion Water. It has the link, and as well as a YouTube video as to how to register.
So really appreciate that. I think that's a real benefit to our.
I've gotten a lot of positive energy from it.
Yeah, great.
They appreciate it, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're always looking for positive energy because it's not always.
This is true.
So is this software that's part of the new electronic water
Yeah.
metering system?
Correct.
And so does that software have some alerts you can set in it that, basically do some analysis on its own and alert you for possible leaks like AI?
Correct. Yeah, you can set those up yourself. If for some reason or another you can't, I can try to do it from my end.
Well, and that's what I was getting at was, when I meant, can you do it, I meant, are you doing it on your end? Because I hadn't thought about it until you guys brought it up tonight, but, that's a big benefit of that electronic water metering is that, like Phil said, we don't have to wait for them to get a high bill. We could figure it out and alert them, and I was just wondering if you're using that software to, help you, rather than you having to study it every day, like you talked about looking at the reports, if it'll alert you and you can, kind of automate that a little bit more.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's a default.
Yes.
When you sign up, it's a default 1 gallon of
It'll-
continuous flow of 1
right.
gallon.
Per hour.
But you can set your own pain threshold. So if you
But
want,
do people have to be signed up in order for you to have that
Yes.
data is what I'm,
they do have
No.
to sign up.
No,
Oh,
she has access. to
She has
that.
access, but for you to get the email, you have to sign up.
okay, so you don't have any way to notify people without them signing up?
No, she does.
I
okay,
do,
okay.
and that's when I send them the
you mean
email.
for you to get the automated email?
Right.
I get it, okay.
Yeah,
got it.
I'll
That's
send
what I was
them-
trying to figure out,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'll send them an email and then give them instructions on how
Okay.
they can register.
I understand now, thank
Yeah.
you, I think
And you
that's
actually get
wonderful.
multiple emails. I know this because I apparently have
A leak,
I have a toilet that's leaking at 1.2 gallons per hour.
that's terrible.
But
It
so you get one
explains-
in the morning and you get one in the evening if you
Okay,
haven't
great.
fixed it. So, and I haven't yet.
You can also just turn off the valve if you don't
I've
have
got to
time.
find it. I literally don't know which one it is, so I got to go find it.
Oh, you don't know which toilet it
The
is?
back of the
Okay.
toilet.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
You can
just
usually
hear it.
hear it, yeah.
I know. I can't
Go
hear it
home,
from the
go
Capitol
home,
though.
Gavin. Your house is on fire, go home.
You're not the only one in the house, they have yours too.
Well, thank you for all that.
Of course, yes, I enjoy it. Thank
That's
you.
very useful.
I have,
Yes, ma'am.
go ahead.
Brad.
If we have a resident that is not internet capable of signing up themselves, elderly person or someone who doesn't keep a cell phone in their hand,
Right.
can we have a little grace period for people that aren't able to do that monitoring on their own?
I mean, I'd be glad to help them.
Okay,
I don't have a problem with that. I prefer to do that than for them not to know, and that it's pretty easy to learn it.
I've done it, I know
Yeah.
what it is.
Right.
I'm just
So-
wondering if we have a few residents who may not.
Right.
be
No, I
able
don't
to
have
do
a
that.
problem with helping them if they want to come in, and I can help them sign up for it.
Okay,
Because they would have to set up a password more than anything.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
I can do it here, but it's just a password.
Mhm.
And I can speak to that too. It doesn't take her very long because she helped
Yeah.
me do mine.
Okay,
So, yeah.
well, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if you guys think we should add anything to this, like in the process, like making it clear that if you find out about this, if you get the leak and you can sign up after you've identified the leak or the leak's happened, you know. I mean, it reads, it's fine, I'll go sign up tonight, like, it's fine, I'll have it on my thing, but I'm just wondering if we needed to be, like, call that out, that you basically could sign up after you find out about the leak.
I think that the intent is to try to incentivize people to sign up for it, and so I'm afraid if you automatically gave them a get out of the jail free card, then it would probably not have.
Right.
Well, then what we should do is give a time period, like we can vote on this tonight and have it approved, that's
You can do
great,
that.
but there should be some window of time where we're letting people know that this is gonna be the new
Like
process.
this is the new
going
thing.
forward.
Yeah, we could do that. You could have an effect. You could have a future effective date of say 90 days or 60 days or something.
Could, however,
We
I
have
mean,
done that.
the way it reads currently is literally they can go out and sign up and then they're eligible to appeal their bill.
That's true.
So it's really not holding them back at all. I don't think we need.
It's a great point, actually. Yeah.
Well, but we need to have a limit on that. We can't say, yeah, you don't have to sign up for a year, and then if you have a leak, you can come in and sign up and get, I mean, the point is to get people signed up so that we're not
I think
wasting the water.
Phil actually probably points out it probably solves your issue and makes that point because you were correct, and we could just advise anyone like just so you know you can't appeal this unless you're signed up.
Right.
So and then they couldn't even engage in the appeal process before they signed up, and then that can be taken into account after the appeal or during the appeal process.
I mean, yes, it can be taken into account. No, also, really, I think what the Utility Commission is trying to do, it would be great if we could automatically get everybody to sign up. That would be absolutely ideal. But what we don't want is people chronically having leaks, being unaware of them, or saying that they don't have leaks. You know, the current Ion water system alone has helped knock down a lot of the appeals process that we've had because it does report everybody's water usage on, I believe, 15-minute increments. And they literally can see, oh, okay, yeah, I see what's happening and when it's happening and what's going on. And, oh, yeah, I forgot, we filled our pool, we did whatever they did. Right? And so the electronic system has helped the appeals process already. This is just another step to say you need to be signed up on it. And if you come in to do an appeal, you can sign up right before you come in, right before they apply for the appeal. But they have to be signed up, and that way we don't have the same people coming back every couple of years or 6 months or whatever. And that's really the goal. It would be great, and we have, I believe there have been proactive things of putting things in people's bills, please sign up for Eye on Water, all of those efforts have been taken. So between that and Veronica proactively informing people when she becomes aware that they may possibly have a leak, I think we're kind of addressing all of the concerns there. And I think the current, what the Utility Commission put forward is a great policy. I'm willing to discuss it further, but I think it addresses what we need to get done.
One thing that I think that's missing that we need to add on here, it says, number 4 on there, it says, have elected to receive leak alerts for each of their accounts' electronic water meters through Eye on Water. It doesn't say what that leak level has to be. And I don't think we should have people appealing usage that they can identify, but they are not alerted to it because they've set their leak limit at, 1,000 gallons a day or 100 gallons a day or whatever.
I think that would be addressed during the appeals process. If you set your leak alert at such a high level, I think you have very little ground to stand on when you're appealing that, I had 2,000 gallons and I don't think I used that much. Well, you set your leak alert at 1,000 gallons. I mean, those things would come up at that time too.
Right, but if the point of all of this is to prevent the leaks and the waste of water in the first
I
place.
get that, but I also don't want to take away people's personal preferences, and part of the thing about this system is they get to say what their pain threshold is, and everybody has different kinds of households and different usages, so I do think leaving it up to them, and once again, we still have our,
I'll be honest with you. I didn't set mine. I just let it go to the default, and the default is a gallon. So a gallon, continuous. It's a continuous an hour, a gallon per hour continuous flow, right? And so my guess is it's probably not going to be much.
yeah,
of a
most
problem.
people are probably just gonna allow it to.
Because if you're going to sign up for it, you're probably not going to crank up the. Like hell, I want to know if
Leave
I'm
me
going to
alone.
sign up for it. So.
That's what I think, yeah.
But I mean, you could add it. Whatever your council's desire is. But I will take a motion on said.
Make a motion.
If you want to amend it, you can, and we can take it in.
I move that
two
we
votes.
accept the appeals process as recommended by the Utility Commission.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie, a second by Mr. Glasheen. Further discussion or amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 9. Discussion and possible action on amendments to section 107-3 definitions and 107
It's better than what we have now, so.
and 107-75 yards generally, to provide that the front yard of a lot shall be the yard which abuts the addressed street, providing for the location of the primary entrances. You will recognize this issue, council. This has been before you a number of times. It has also been to planning and zoning and has received its own special opportunity for public comment, public meeting, I believe last month. And it is back before you for possible action this evening, as well as the items that follow it, which are also in the same boat. So happy to recognize anyone on the issue and recognize anyone for any motions. Ms. Brown?
Mr. Mayor, I'll be glad to address this. The proposed ordinance, this clarifies that a house should be addressed on the street that the address of the house, the front of the house should be faced let me begin again. That the front yard will be the yard that the front yard will be the yard that faces the address street. In other words, you can't have a house facing one street and be addressed on the other street. On a corner lot is where we've had the issue. And that it also, for benefit to our emergency services, the primary entrance of the home doesn't have to necessarily face the address street, but you should have, the lot should have markers or other sidewalks, other indications that get you from that address to the front door of the house. And so that's what this rather simple ordinance amendment is designed to do.
Great layout.
Has been approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on a 6-0 vote, and I would recommend approval,
Is that a motion?
unless there's discussion.
Make a motion and then we can
Okay.
discuss.
I move that the council approve ordinance 2025-03-19-09 regarding the front yard and the address street of the lot.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion, council? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 10, discussion of possible action on the addition of section 107-81 fences to the city's code of ordinances to provide for a standard allowable fence height of 8 feet and for a special exception for fences exceeding 8 feet in height. This again is in the same boat as the agenda item number 9. It has been before you a number of times. It has gone to planning and zoning, and it has also had a designated meeting for public comment. And that worked so well last time. You want to just do that again, Ms. Brown?
All right.
Go for it.
Mayor and council, this is a very simple amendment that specifies the maximum height of a fence to be 8 feet with an exception that may be granted if the fence, if the 8-foot height needs to be adjusted to address privacy, safety, or continuity on a sloped lot or where there's a privacy issue. The Board of Adjustment can grant a special exception to exceed the 8 feet. And it fills a gap in our code where we did not have a specified fence height. And I would recommend approval of ordinance 2025-03-19-10.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, second by Mr. Robinson. Is there further discussion, council?
I was curious why the P and Z took out the part about allowing for a special exception above 8 feet if the fence is engineered.
I beg your pardon? If the fence is what? I didn't hear that.
Engineered?
Well, I think it was there was some concern that engineered was not really a good descriptive term, that it didn't necessarily describe what needed to be done to be, quote, engineered. So perhaps our city development officer would like to address that.
Yes, ma'am. So a lot of the time with anything that is above 6 feet, it has to be engineered for the building code with building standards.
That's the international building
International
code.
building code, yes. So ATS, who reviews our plans, anything over that, it already has to be engineered. So it kind of takes away if they kind of doubled it. Yes, it's redundant.
So when somebody wants to get a special exception, is Board of Adjustment going to be aware of that requirement?
Well, they should be, because, I mean, if they were gonna get an 8-foot fence, they're gonna have to get an engineered plan, period, to get a permit. So you're gonna have,
Well, then-
it's gonna be a requirement for the for the
Because you'll treat that
permitting
as a
itself.
wall,
Correct.
right?
So right now, anything, the way, you're saying anything above 6 feet has to have
Engineered
the
plans.
design
Correct.
currently.
Yes, ma'am.
So us changing it to 8 feet doesn't eliminate the need to have that design.
Well, I think there are two questions. One is that the International Building Code would say, if you're going above 6 feet, here's the standards. Here's the the construction standards. And then this code says you can't go above 8 feet under our zoning limitations unless there's an issue of privacy, safety, or continuity. I think that's, one has to do with the structural stability, and that's under the International Building Code. And then the other is if you go over 8 feet, it's gotta be for one of those reasons.
Very well stated.
Or you've gotta get an exception for one of those reasons.
So I'm just wondering if that raising it 2 feet is going to make people think that they don't have to get a permit or do anything. If it's 8 feet tall, because
Right. At
they
any
don't
time,
have to have a permit, right? It's,
at any time, you should be
It's
getting a
approved.
permit for it.
Yeah, you have to get a permit to build anything.
Right.
This doesn't change
Even for the fence,
even for
Correct.
the fence.
right?
Yeah.
So I have a question, or a comment or something. But, it seems to me if we're gonna let people build a fence up to 8 feet, which I think is a good idea, okay, I support that. We should eliminate the need for engineering a fence up to 8 feet. Why not?
that's international building.
It's
code.
international building
interna-
code.
Well, we don't
It's-
care. The International Building Code's just a suggestion that we
It's
can
in our
adopt.
code.
Requirement.
You've adopted it. You'll
That's
have
what I'm saying, which we can adopt or amend as we like.
to- Yeah, you have to repeal it.
No, we could, I don't think so, but, I mean, you can tell me, but we could say, notwithstanding the International Building Code, a fence can be built up to 8 feet without being engineered. Couldn't we?
No, I wouldn't do it that way. I would specifically, you adopt the state law actually adopts the international building codes for y'all, and so I would prefer that we go in specifically to repeal that provision if that's something council wants to do.
Well, and that's in a different section of the
And it's a
code.
different section of the code, it's not zoning, it's
Yeah.
both of those.
So if somebody wants to build a 7-foot fence instead of a 6-foot, they have to get an engineer to file a plan.
Well, even if they wanted to build a 6-foot fence, but if it was considered a wall
Right.
based on the
It's considered
construction.
a wall, so
So if they're building a CMU block,
absolutely.
if they're building a CMU block 6 feet tall, they're gonna still have to get that engineered.
Well, yeah, I would expect that with CMU, but if I'm talking about a wood privacy fence on posts, I just don't see why we would want to burden people with making some engineer stamp up drawing of a fence to build an 8-foot wood privacy fence. It just seems excessive to me, but you're telling me that's just normal the way it is all around the world, then okay, fine. It just seems like really annoying.
Well, if somebody brings in an 8-foot wood fence,
You have to have engineered footings.
the footings have, so it's just the footings that are
It's the
engineered.
footing, and
So
it's
An 18,
Wide on it, it's a
18
very
inch
basic,
hole with 1 cubic foot of concrete
yeah.
on a 4x4.
And they really, they turn that around to you pretty quickly too, because that
It's kind of just a
it's like a
standard.
it's a cross section of what the footing's going to be. They crank it out to you, and I mean, I'm with you in that it is added expense that I'm not wild about,
It has to get stamped.
but
It's a
it's
safety standard. That
but it's not that onerous because they turn it around to you pretty quick, right?
I guess most of your fence builders are used to that and have a plan and have
Right.
somebody who stamps them for them.
Probably what happens.
Yeah.
And probably the cost of the wood to build that fence is gonna be way more.
Yeah.
Well, I know a 90-year-old engineer, he'll stamp anything, but you have to help him lift his hand up and do it. Thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, you do have a motion and a second. Is there further questions or discussion?
Is
Yes, ma'am.
P and Z looking at construction materials for fences? So we've got something else coming in.
That
I mean,
is
what I'm concerned about is
the way it looks.
is the, cinder block walls that are
Correct.
going up, and
That is
those-
something that they've had on their agenda, and I believe
Yeah.
it is coming back the next time.
yeah, because that's a safety hazard for the neighbors if it's not, I mean, for
Absolutely.
whoever's putting it in as well, but also for the surrounding neighbors if it's not properly installed, so.
But not agenda 10 for tonight. So,
Okay.
are any other questions about fence height? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 11, discussion of possible action on the addition of section 107-5 residential lighting manual and 107-81 exterior lighting requirements to the city's code of ordinances. Ms. Brown?
Mayor and council, this is, you'll recognize this ordinance. It's been before us before a public hearing. It came before the Planning and Zoning Commission at their meeting last month. They did not recommend approval of this as an ordinance. They recommended approval on a 4-2 vote to adopt the concepts that are in this ordinance as best practices. I think there was some concern that the major concern at Planning and Zoning was bringing about bringing existing homes into compliance with this practice. And so when I went back through this in preparation for this meeting, it seems to me the council might have 3 options. One, we could adopt it. We would need four members of the council to vote in approval of it, to adopt it over the disapproval recommendation of the P&Z. We could adopt this on a going forward basis for new construction, limit its application to new construction and existing construction. People could change their lighting fixtures without this being applicable. That would be another option, so that over time, any new construction would have to come into compliance, and then over time, as homes were rebuilt or reconstructed, those homes would come into compliance. And so I think we have, or we can adopt it as best practices only.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Because I understood that it, as it's written and sitting here before us tonight, the change does not require existing homeowners to change their lighting, that they can leave any existing lighting that they have. And that it's only if they change that lighting, and put new light fixtures up, that they would have to comply. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. And that language, I'll point it out to you because I think this is one of the items that in thinking about it, might be the place to modify it if that were your decision. If you look at, it's on the 3rd page. Actually, it begins on the 2nd page at the bottom. All outdoor light, this is as it's drafted in the packet, that outdoor lighting fixtures would have to come into compliance if there is a new site plan or building permit for the construction of a new building or modification of 50% or more of an existing structure, or, and this is at line 87, replacement or modification of an existing non-conforming fixture. It occurs to me that what we could do there is say replacement of an outdoor lighting system, so that it's if you're changing your whole plan of outdoor lighting, not just because one fixture goes out, and then add an exception. You see paragraph C begins the exceptions. We could add an exception for the replacement of an individual existing fixture with an identical fixture.
I just don't think it's onerous to require someone who's replacing a fixture to replace it with one that is conforming with this, because it's bad policy, I mean, it's just bad form to have a light on your house that shines into your neighbor's windows. And so if you have one of those, fine, we're not gonna make you take it down, but if you're gonna replace it,
Mhm.
put one up that's either on a timer, if it's a security light, this allows for security lights on a 10-minute timer, motion activated, or put one on there that's shielded and doesn't shine into your neighbors. It doesn't seem
It-
onerous to me.
If,
Unless you have all matching fixtures.
that's the
Yeah.
example. For example,
Right.
my house has two torches that would not be in compliance. If one of them goes out and one of them's shaky, I would have to replace both of them to be in compliance. And that's okay, you know, that doesn't offend me, but that's the situation if you had multiple matching outdoor fixtures, one of them goes out, does this ordinance now apply?
But in how
And I
many
don't think
times-
we intend that.
And how many times do outdoor light fixtures just fail either? Like you got three identical ones. I mean, yeah.
That,
bulbs go
I
out.
can't get the light bulbs for these anymore.
What I'm saying is that fixtures don't fail that often, that,
True.
you know, somebody's got 5 identical ones and one of them failed. It's just like unusual. I mean, and if they're getting that long in the tooth that they're failing, it's like, I just don't think it's that onerous of a burden to say that if you replace the fixture, it needs to comply. That's just my opinion. But I
Well,
think
I'll
that-
offer that for discussion purposes.
Sure.
I like your, recommendation, and I will say that if a light is shining in somebody's bedroom window, that's a nuisance, and so we have nuisance ordinance that should take that.
It
Yeah.
doesn't, I mean, you can ask Charlie, we can ask Charlie
Well,
about
then-
it. You have no remedy if your neighbor has a light shining in your house unless it's just extreme.
Civil nuisance.
Yeah, but I mean, can I do a civil nuisance?
BB
'cause
gun.
my neighbor across the Inwood Circle has lights on the outside of his house that light up my bedroom at night?
Depends on the judge.
And am I gonna sue my neighbor over it?
No,
No, that's the
you're not.
answer.
That's
No,
the
I
key.
will not sue my neighbor for having a light shining in my window.
That's
I'll
the
be
key.
annoyed. I'll be annoyed, but I won't sue them. I might ask them politely and, you know, they
As
might.
someone who has a neighbor who has a security light shining right down into their house every night, I can assure you they won't sue them. Because I have not done that. And it makes me very.
Is it on a timer at least? It's on all night. See, and I just don't think that's okay. I think that's not okay. It's just my
So,
view.
Neighbors are gonna call the police to go and like, get the thing down.
Yeah, I don't want people making nuisance reports to the police department over a light.
I don't know.
Because if we have a nuisance law, that means our police have to respond to it.
Well, if there's a code violation, somebody has to enforce that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, but it's not, our police aren't gonna do anything about a nuisance complaint about a light on a house. They just can't, it's not, nothing's gonna happen with that. And all it does then is engenders conflict between the neighbors because, oh, you called the cops on me, ha ha ha, nothing can be done about it. I'm putting up a brighter light now. And I can tell you there are people in this neighborhood who have put up lights as a means of annoying their neighbors on purpose. We all know it's true. And I just don't think it's okay.
I don't know, maybe I misunderstood you, but if we are like, don't have any intention, you're saying that they can't enforce it anyway, why are we gonna add something to the code that we're not gonna enforce?
I'm saying they can enforce the code if we write it, but they can't enforce it under nuisance law as a practical matter, because the comment
We
was
don't
from
have a
Ms.
nuisance.
Ms. Hudson that, oh, we already have nuisance laws, and if somebody's shining a light in your window, that's a nuisance, and I'm saying that's not right. You can't enforce it under nuisance law as a practical matter. It's not enforceable. We don't have any tools to address this right now, and so that's why we're trying to create one.
Also not enforceable is being a good neighbor. And so I encourage communication also as an option to our residents. So.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Well,
always work.
Yeah, you've gotten those calls, haven't you? And
I-
they say, my neighbor is doing this that annoys
That's
me.
why I'm encouraging
And my
it.
answer is, I encourage you to go talk to them about it. And they're like, well, I'm just not comfortable doing that. You know? That's why they called us. That's why they want us to do something about it. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, is to do something about something I've heard complaints about and personally have experienced. And I think there's been a proliferation of these lights outside of houses. they've grown in the 10 years I've been here in this community. And with the advent of LED lighting and the proliferation of LED lighting, you're seeing a lot more lumens out there than we used to get, because LED lighting is so efficient, it produces so much light. And also a lot of the early LED lights especially, and even the ones now, tend to be on the very hot spectrum, which is very white, bright light that penetrates your house, as opposed to a softer, warmer, yellowish light that you used to get maybe from an incandescent bulb. So I just think it's a growing problem, and I just think we need to step up and deal with it.
Well, and in thinking about this and working on it, you know, our comprehensive plan says that this is an issue to be addressed. It hasn't raised any problems in our, you know, we've done these standards, very similar standards in our commercial code. It hasn't raised a problem. If we apply it going forward to new builds, and when outdoor lighting fixtures are replaced, it's not an immediate problem for a current homeowner. So I think it's a good plan, and I think, you know, probably 5 years from now, this won't be an issue, because you won't be able to get the light fixtures generally will be the shielded
Right, like
form of fixture.
you probably can't find a matching one if one of 5 of your 15-year-old light fixtures goes out. Good luck finding one that matches anyway. And the reality is, we're never going to know about it, because none of the homeowners are going to even know that this exists. And if they can find an existing light fixture to replace their one, they're going to, and they're not going to talk to us about it, and no one's going to ever hear about it. So it's like, I don't think it's ever going to be an issue. But anyway, I strongly support the ordinance the way it's proposed. I'd move that we adopt it.
I'll accept the motion. You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen to adopt the, I'm going to clarify, Mr. Glasheen, to adopt
By the title.
ordinance 2025-03-19-11, correct?
Correct.
Okay, you have a motion. Is there a second? And then I'm going to take. Okay, you have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Mr. McDuffie. I will point out, council, this was mentioned by Ms. Brown. So the motion by the Planning and Zoning Commission was to recommend disapproval by the City Council, but to recognize it as a useful set of best practices and to publish it where appropriate. That was the motion that passed on a 4-2 vote. The motion that's before you, council, is a motion to not do that, but rather to adopt the to adopt the ordinance as written as ordinance. So in order to do that, it does require a 4/5 vote by the council.
Yeah, I'm not gonna vote in favor of it. Probably already knew that. I mean, if it's 4-2, like, I think we should just step into it with the best practice manuals, like what they approved. And that's just sort of, it's not like this is like 3, like, I don't know. It seems like pretty big. 4-2's like 66% the P&Z. So that's kind of where I am on it. I'd rather just go with their recommendation.
I don't know how you enforce a best practice
Can't.
either. I would be more in favor of tweaking this so that P&Z was in favor of it, as opposed to overriding their recommendation.
I'd be in favor of tweaking P&Z to get them to be more in favor of it.
Step up. Sure, sir. You're recognized.
Dave Bench, 1 Randolph. I just want to remind council that not only is this P&Z recommendation against, it was a CRCRC recommendation for, and that was a unanimous thing. And we had all of this discussion that we're hearing this evening. We've heard it before. And I was working hard to actually make council members Glasheen point that, in fact, we have no tools right now for neighbors to correct a situation by way of ordinance. And I believe that this ordinance ought to pass as is, so that neighbors who do have problems with lighting from another neighbor have some recourse that they can go and speak with police or whatever, or city council or staff and try to get a problem corrected. Right now, there's no way to do that. Thank you.
Just to add to that, Mr. Bench was speaking on behalf of himself, not on behalf of P and Z. Mr. Bench and Mr. Fleming were the no votes on P and Z, and the remainder of the 4 were yes votes.
The vote was to disapprove, the motion at P and Z was to disapprove, so Bench and Fleming were in favor of the ordinance.
Of the ordinance,
Yes.
but they voted against the motion. I was just pointing out for the record.
Yeah, but the motion was to disapprove.
Correct. Yeah, we were
Just
saying,
so it-
we're
yeah.
saying the same thing. yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments, council?
I mean, the only other comment is I would like what Sarah just mentioned about like it would be nice to have something that P and Z would approve. I don't know if there's anything that you think any adjustments that could be made so that it could go back to them. They could actually send us something that they are all in favor of, and we could vote. But okay, that tells me.
I think they've worked, you know, if that was a possibility, I think they've tried.
It would have been done.
The compromise was to make it a best practice. That was it.
That was the,
Which has no teeth.
But there's no, that's not enforceable, so.
Correct.
Okay, I think council has what you need to vote. You do have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2025-03-19-11, and to place the ordinance in our city code of ordinances. This is in contradiction to the planning and zoning recommendation to disapprove said ordinance. I think everyone's clear, and so to pass this ordinance, it does require a 4/5 vote, and with that, I will call a roll call vote. Ms. Brown?
aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Nay.
Mr. Glasheen?
Yes.
Mr. McDuffie?
Aye.
Ms. Hudson?
Aye.
Being 4 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Thank you, council. That will move on to agenda item number 12, discussion and possible action on amendments to chapter 107 of the City of Rolling Woods Code of Ordinances, section 107-369 to section 107-379 to residential landscape and tree canopy management. Recognize Ms. Brown if she'd be willing to lay this out.
I will be glad to lay this out, Mr. Mayor. This is a proposed, this proposed ordinance adds additional protections to the existing residential tree canopy protection ordinance. The additional protections have to do with protected trees, which are trees protecting both protected trees, that is trees of a diameter of 12 inches or greater within setbacks, and also greater protection for heritage trees, which are trees of a diameter of 24 inches or greater within setbacks. That is the proposal that's before you. This ordinance was approved by Planning and Zoning by a vote of 5-1. So it's been approved by Planning and Zoning. There are a couple of, there's several wording edits that I found going through this one more time, a little bit of wordsmithing that I'd like to go through with you at the appropriate time. And then also there were some edits that came from Charlie's office. There was an error in the identification where this ordinance goes in our code that's been cleared up, and that's in the last version that you got this afternoon in the packet. So if you want me to, I can go through the further edits with regard to that I came up with in going through this. It's basically, I think there are two primary issues to talk about. One is, do we want to, there was a debate beginning at CRCRC and within P&Z that whether or not to protect heritage trees that are within the buildable area of the lot, but not under the actual permitted footprint? Or do we just protect heritage trees that are within the required yards? So for example, if you have a heritage tree that is not within a required front, back, or side yard, meaning it's in the area that's possible for building, then do you want to protect that tree or have a special protection for it if it's not within the building footprint? In other words, you have a rectangle bounded on the interior of the lot, bounded by the required side and front and rear yards. You can build in there the building footprint. The proposed house does not cover the foot of the protected or the heritage tree. Do you want to protect that heritage tree, or do you want to allow the builder to knock it down during the construction period? And if we do protect those heritage trees, then how close to the building do you give the builder leeway to take down a heritage tree because its critical root zone or its canopy interferes with the house, or vice versa? The house will interfere with the tree. So that's one of the issues that I think we need to discuss and make a cut on. And then the other one has to do, and this is kind of a technical code issue. This ordinance says that the building certain permit approvals and approval to take down a dead or diseased tree would be approved by the city development officer. Everything else in our code having to do with permits says these actions are handled by our building official. And so under rules of statutory construction, if we define some tasks for a person called a building official and other tasks for a person called a city development officer, then the law presumes that there's two different people because we've used two different terms. And what the drafters and CRC wanted to do was make sure that this goes to Nikki, someone in-house, and not one of our third-party consultants. And so they used the term city development officer, which is a staff position within the city. I think the better course is to say, for purposes, to wordsmith that a bit and say, for purposes of this ordinance, building official means the city development officer, instead of saying, using city development officer throughout this ordinance when that spot is typically referred to as the building official. It's just a statutory it eliminates a statutory construction problem. And so that's that's the other big issue.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
First of all, I have no problem with the building official, development officer correction language, and I think you raise an interesting question about the yard in general that we need to discuss. In other words, protecting trees that are on the lot but not in the required setback yards and not in the building footprint. We need to talk about that. But when you were talking about, well, how far away from the house do we protect it, it raised a question in my mind, like what if we have a heritage oak that's in a 10-foot side yard, okay? And the old existing house that was there, built in the 70s, is 30 feet away from the side lot line, so it's not crowding that big oak. And then somebody buys that lot and tears down the old house and wants to build a house that goes up to 10 feet away from the side yard, and now they're only 5 feet away from a heritage oak tree. Can they lop off half of that tree's limbs? And are they allowed to do that in order to make room for their house? And how is it that we're preventing that from happening?
Well,
We have a draft.
the way this is drafted, the way this is, and we have the experts
Yes.
here. The way this is drafted, it would protect a heritage oak if it were on the line between, if it were on the inner side of that required yard line, between
Okay,
the,
so
yard.
it's
Yeah.
in the side yard.
In, not, it would protect it up to if its critical root zone, were to straddle the line between the required yard and the buildable area.
Okay.
But if it were just inside that, it wouldn't protect it. If it were just, if it were further inside if its whole critical root zone were inside the buildable area, it wouldn't protect it.
Okay, but is it like half of the
So-
critical root zone that's protected?
I
think that's what we talked about this last time, right?
yeah.
And we came up with a half rule, basically, right?
As I,
Again, the idea,
Identify-
Jay Van Bavel, 5012 Timberline. The original idea was to extend protection to what we now call heritage trees and protect them by excluding damaging the tree by excavating or doing construction in more than 50% of their critical root zone. And if the tree is entirely in a yard, then there can't be 50% of the critical root zone in the buildable area.
If the trunk is entirely in the side yard, but it
That's
could
right.
be 1 foot in from the side yard boundary. And then, so you could have like less than 50% of your critical root zone could be in the buildable zone. And I didn't describe that very well. This is very awkward discussion, but
So let's say you have a tree that is, the trunk is 25% in the yard and 75% of the trunk is in the buildable area. That, by this code, that would say that that tree is considered to be in the yard, in the yard area. Okay, if more than 25% of it is in the, 25% or more is in the yard area, then it's considered in the yard area.
okay.
And you can't, it would say that you can't destroy 50% of the critical root zone of that tree,
Okay,
okay, without a special exception.
sure.
Right.
But could you prune half of that tree's limbs off so that you could build your 30-foot tall house, on the 10-foot or 15?
That's also currently in the
10-foot
code.
setback?
You can't prune more than 25%
Okay,
of a tree, or else it's considered to be destroying the tree.
that's helpful, thank you. That's
Yeah.
really, that really directly hits my question, so I appreciate it. That's
And
helpful.
I guess that's based on arborists saying that that's
Sure.
highly likely to adversely affect the lifespan of the tree.
That's what I was concerned about, is I didn't want people cutting half a tree off so they could build their 30-foot tall house and take out, slowly kill the tree instead of just removing it.
I think the main thing that's, the CRCRC, their proposal was to protect heritage trees, requiring Board of Adjustment exceptions anywhere on the lot except for in the approved building footprint.
Mm-hmm.
P and Z, if I'm stating it correctly, wanted that to be only requiring Board of Adjustment exception for heritage trees that are in the required yards. In other words, they can take out heritage trees in an entire buildable area with a permit, of course, and proper remediation, but they don't need a Board of Adjustment special exception to do that. In my opinion, that's probably an okay way to go, because if you need a Board of Adjustment special exception for things that are in the footprint, then you're probably just gonna take up the entire buildable area, which is what people are doing anyway right now,
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually to require for the buildable area outside of the building footprint, would kind of incentivize people to build to the maximum
Right.
area, so I think the way that it's stated now is Board of Adjustment of special exception for any heritage tree that's considered in the required yard areas.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of that.
I would like to read the language about the trees that straddle and see if we're clear on the language. And this is, page 9, section 375, 107-375.
Okay, in which
Uh,
subsection?
Let me get to my, and I'm looking at the very, probably be, if you go to the version that's the BBB edits version,
Mhm.
if you have that,
I do.
it's page 8. Not sure. It's page 9, lines 326 to 333. It says, if a protected or heritage tree straddles the boundary between the yard area and the permitted building footprint, there's gonna be a gap there. Or there may be a gap there. It shall be considered removed from the yard area if 25% or more of the trunk diameter is in the yard.
Yeah, so, and we talked about the building
So I think we
footprint
need to
actually
wordsmith this.
needs to be buildable area, if that's what the council wants to do.
Well, what I'm saying is, if the yellow pad is the property and the buildable area is my cell phone, you can have a tree, you can have the house, the permitted building footprint is gonna be within the area of my cell phone.
Mhm.
And let's say the tree's right here, and the building footprint doesn't touch the tree,
Mhm.
then this language doesn't fit the issue because the tree doesn't straddle the yard and the building footprint. It straddles the yard and the buildable area.
I
So
totally
I
agree
think
that
we
this,
need to-
this needs to read, if a protected or heritage tree straddles the boundary between the yard and the buildable area, it shall be considered removed from the yard area if 25% or more of the trunk diameter is in the yard area.
Okay.
I can't even understand that sentence.
Well, it's the prohibition, the general prohibition, it is in 107-373A2. And that says you can't remove a heritage tree from the yard unless you get a special, you can't remove it from the yard unless you get a special exception. So that's the protection.
So when it says it shall be considered removed from the yard if 25%, okay. So they're saying if 25% or more of the trunk is in the yard, it's in the yard.
It's in the
That's
yard
right,
and you
okay.
can't remove it without a
Okay.
special exception.
Okay. It was that shall consider to be removed that got me, but that probably relates back to other language about what's removed and what's
Yes.
not removed.
But the issue, it needs to be, what is shown here is permitted building footprint needs to be buildable area.
I think we got a consensus on that, so can we kind of make that note and then start dealing with other proposed changes and, you know,
I'm happy.
so we can collect them and make sure we get something we can vote on?
Yes. And with council's permission, I'll walk through the edits on that I sent out this afternoon, if you want me to.
Which document?
It's the BBB edits to proposed tree ordinance, the fourth document under this item.
I'm okay with that. The only thing I'd ask is that you'd consider is that as we go through those, if we could keep it as simple as possible and like try to let some of them go if they're just technical, you know, so that we can get something passed.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
just say let it go and we can go
I'll
on.
sing it from Frozen. All right.
Okay.
I mean, and let me also say, I do appreciate your attention to detail and catching things like that last point. And so I don't mean to disparage your efforts at all. I just don't want to get
That,
bogged.
I actually have a question about that, because if this is passed by, which is like, what was this, pretty, like 5-1 or something like that? If we make any changes to this, like how many changes can we make before it needs to go back to planning and zoning for a review? Or none? Or can we just change as much as we want? Like, it's just kind of like a curious question that I had, because we've done this before where we change stuff, then it gets approved and fine, but I was just kind of like thinking after the fact.
Yeah,
like,
the recommendation is the recommendation. You can do with it what you
so
want.
it just needs, you need something
Yeah.
recommended.
If it is a
planning and
yeah,
zoning,
if
and
it is a
then
re-
do.
Do whatever you want.
Okay.
if it is a reversal of what is coming to you, then it requires the 4/5 vote.
Okay.
But if you're just amending the recommendation and
Got
but
it.
it still meets the general intent of the recommendation, and I would suppose I'm the parliamentarian to rule on that, but as long as it's still trending in the same direction, you can do with it what you want.
Got it.
Do you disagree, Counselor? Generally, he doesn't disagree.
And I will say, I will try to point out if there's a substantive change versus wordsmithing, just to make, make it comport with the rest of the code. I've done some just wordsmithing, so most of it's just wordsmithing
Okay.
and not a substantive change, but I'll point out when it is a substantive change, if that
All right, let's
will
do
help.
it. I'll try to make notes. Somebody.
Okay. Starting with page 2, that just corrects the subdivision this new ordinance would be located in.
It'd help me if you just go by the line number
Oh,
on the
sure.
left,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
line 41 and 43,
Okay,
just getting it in the right section.
okay.
Line 128. As written, it says, a total diameter of 24 or higher for a multi-trunk tree is a heritage tree. I rewrote this. I suggest rewriting it. A multi-trunk tree having a total diameter of 24 inches or more is a heritage tree.
That's grammar.
It's grammar.
Okay.
Yes.
I was like,
It's grammar, yes. It is grammar, but
It makes it more clear.
It's better writing. Okay,
okay.
so 128 and 129, okay.
Then, if
And
you-
these are all drafted off of just some parliamentary inquiries from me. So your changes are they drafted off of the ordinance, the draft ordinance, the amended? So are your changes, they're drafted off the amended? Okay.
my changes are before the changes that came with Charlie's this afternoon.
Yes. Okay. Then
And Charlie's just had 2 changes.
okay.
And one of those was the section 3.
Give me just a second,
Okay.
Councilwoman. I want to look at.
But the line numbers are a little different in Charlie's version.
I'm going to make my comment again about getting things the day of the council meeting, because I didn't even know these changes were submitted, because I looked at this before today. And I really dislike having to vote on things that I have not been able to look at ahead of the meeting.
I agree.
Well, and I did this in the, it was a process.
Well,
I'll
and
just
we're
say
gonna
that.
have to talk about the proposed changes sometime, so we'll
Yeah.
talk about them now, and if we're not comfortable.
We can talk about them now, have it drafted as we vote tonight and bring it back for next council meeting
if we
for
need
a
to.
final vote.
And I'm happy to also, if it's council's desire, I can get some clarity from you. For instance, I could get clarity from you on whether you want to go with the amended version or not, and then I could get some clarity as we go on whether you like or dislike the changes that are about to be laid out by Ms. Brown.
What are you calling the amended version?
The draft ordinance amended residential landscape and tree PD. It's the one too. It's the third attachment.
Okay.
And so I could get clarity on that, and then I could get clarity as we go on what you're about to lay out, and then based on that input, we could bring back the final for actual action. That might solve everyone's
Yeah.
confusion. If so, with that in mind, if I could take a break there and let me get clarity on first the third attachment, which is what Ms. Brown made her changes to. So this is the addition of, with the public comment. So this is the addition when it says as amended. This has the language that was brought to you that we talked about first. That was the public comment from last month. And so is it council's general feeling that you like this additional language that is highlighted in this draft related to the critical root zone? That's the discussion you previously had.
Right.
And we can just straw poll. I don't need to.
And that amended version was what was approved at P and Z.
No.
With-
Come up, Nikki.
It,
if you would.
it reflects the ordinance as considered by P and Z and as amended by P and Z.
Yes. So the one that's in your packet that says amended is, okay, so actually, if you go in your packet, the first where it just says draft ordinance, residential landscape and tree, that was the one that y'all saw last month for public hearing as amended by P and Z. The next one, the draft ordinance amended residential landscape, that is what you saw last month for the public hearing with the addition of Mr. Van Bevel's edits with the 50% CRZ, which was also one of the items that P&Z did recommend with their recommendation, but it kind of got lost in all these translations, and that's why he had brought it back to council as a public comment last time, so that it could get added back in. So
let's pause there.
Yeah.
So let's pause there with that. That's a good explanation. And why don't you just give me a motion if you want to include those public comments in a draft that comes back to you later, and then I'll know what to do with this, and then we'll move on to because you amended this version.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to make a motion to give us direction to add that to the draft, you can do that, and then we'll know what to do with it.
Add the
public
Mr.
comment,
Van,
yes, correct.
Mr. Van Bavel has recommended and that P and Z approved. I would move that we consider those changes and include them in the draft to be brought back to us.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion by Ms. Brown, second by Ms. Hudson. Alec?
Yeah, can discussion on that point?
Sure.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's kind of confusing to me,
it's
I'm
very
sorry.
confusing.
So, the vote that happened, 5-1 in favor, which one of those two was it? The second one, or we have the first thing, you have like this we have this nice agenda summary sheet. That's the first thing in the packet. Then there's an ordinance that's there, and then there's an amended ordinance. Which one did they vote 5-1 in favor of?
They voted 5-1 in favor of the second one, which was
Okay.
just the residential.
Okay.
However, if you do look at what they approved, it was with this cloud of, there was something that, we lost the language with all these different versions. And so they approved that second one. And so this amended one was that found language. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they had to
the way I
So
interpreted
it's kind of both. They seriously approved the one the first
first
one
one.
with just, yes.
Okay, that's
But
what I'm
yes.
Which to be clear, is what my instruction to staff was. I only want what was actually voted on in front of you, and then from there,
Okay.
council has the ability to do what I'm asking you to do right now, which is to
Okay.
add language or not add language,
Got it.
and that's the motion that's before you.
Okay.
I'm
I
sorry,
was-
I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, but it's a little complicated.
And if you look at the one sheet, you can see that the P and Z had 4 items with respect to the proposed ordinance that they wanted to address, wanted to bring to the council's attention and address. So, and that 4th one includes the 50%.
And that's the amended,
Yes, it just didn't have the language in the draft that was before them.
correct.
Okay, council, so if I could get you to go ahead and vote on this motion again, this motion is simply giving us instruction to bring back an ordinance that contains the public comment of the additional language by Mr. Van Bevel. Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Mayor, may I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I would recommend that the motion be that the staff bring back draft ordinance amended landscape and tree with any, and then bring that back as the base document. And then we'll walk through the version BBB edits, and those edits are to that version.
That is my understanding of the motion.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
Being 4 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Thank you, council. That just is not to adopt anything, again, for the record. That is just giving us a direction on what to bring back to you. Now with that, now Ms. Brown, I will recognize you, and we'll probably do as we go here. I'd like to take some short votes to give us the same type of
I
direction.
think that's good.
And then we're going to be very clear then on what to bring back to you for final consideration.
Yeah.
At which time you can still do whatever you want to with it. You can change it, you can whatever. But that gives us the clarity that we need. So with that, you've already laid out the amendments on line 41 and 43. Why don't you make a quick? But those are, if you want to make a quick motion on that, just to get us in the groove here, that's great.
I move approval of use of subdivision 3 in lines 41 and 43, and the deletion of the words deleted and in line 41.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
Okay, so we're not approving this.
You're not approving it. You're just giving direction to us on what to bring back to you in a final form.
Second.
Okay.
You have a second. You have a motion by Ms. Brown, second by Mr. McDuffie. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Being
And-
5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Okay.
And just as a suggestion, Ms. Brown, as you go through these, since we're not actually voting on this, we're just giving direction on drafting, if you say just to adopt the edits on line 41 and 43 or like
Okay.
that, it'll
Yeah.
be quicker and easier. Doesn't
And-
have to be technical.
And
correct.
clearer for the record. Yep, that's great. Okay, moving on. Now we're back on track. You're
All right.
recognized.
The next recommendation is on page 4, lines 128 and 129. This is just a wording change for clarity.
Move to adopt.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McDuffie. All those in favor? I'm not going to give you a lot of time to talk about these because it's just a recommendation. You can talk about it as long as you want next month. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you. Moving
Okay.
on.
At the bottom of page 4, lines 151 through 153, as I have drafted an edit, again, this is for clarity, not a substantive change.
Move to adopt.
Motion to adopt the recommendation for drafting is by Mr. Glasheen. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
You have a second by Mr. McDuffie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Moving on.
Page 5, at the top of page 5, there's the paragraph 154 to 158. If a tree is, this has to do with a tree injured during construction. And again, the edit on line 156 is for clarity. and I would recommend approval.
I move to adopt the recommendation for drafting, adding the language shall be considered removed and at the end of line 156.
And
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Ms. Brown.
Brown, you want us to do this with motions on every one of them?
I think it's gonna be clearer for us.
Okay. Move approval.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
So if you injure a tree during construction, that language says it requires
What
mitigation.
what line is that?
I'm getting to it.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
It says, it requires mitigation. Then between line 162 and 163, I would add a definition of mitigation, meaning such remedies as are determined appropriate in consultation with the city arborist.
So this is between line 1. Okay.
It's between 162 and 163.
Okay. Oh, I see. I got you. So so the actual. I'm with you. So follow that arrow at the top, and so you're
Yes.
adding mitigation means such remedies as are determined appropriate. Consultation written. Okay.
And we have a city arborist?
We don't have a staff city arborist, but we have someone that is a
Designated.
hired city arborist.
Yes. We
So,
have,
so why don't we, let me suggest changing that to mitigation means such remedies as are approved by the city arborist, because otherwise if it's like determined appropriate by whom, I don't know.
It says determine appropriate in consultation with the city.
Yeah, but it doesn't say who makes the determination. I could determine that they're appropriate after consulting with
Wow.
the city arborist.
I guess, yeah.
I would,
right,
so I would
but-
just say is determined appropriate by the city arborist.
I would say to match the other things, tasks the rest of this part of the code, I like it. The rest of this part of the code says that as approved by the city development officer in
Could do that.
consultation with the arborist.
That would be fine.
I'm a little concerned about the definition of city arborist. Does that not need some more clarity? It just says city arborist means an ISA certified arborist, so it's like, does that mean any certified arborist?
Where is that line?
It's right above it.
Right up above it.
Okay.
An ISA certified arborist, so I guess that's the Standards Commission.
Well,
How about if
I'm
we
not-
said designated by the city as the city arborist?
yeah, we just want to have flexibility to work with. Look, we'll always work with the city arborist.
I think it's right. It should be something that we select rather than just
Right.
rather than just the
Right. I
property
mean,
owner selecting
it-
a certified
either-
arborist.
Employed by the city, hired by the city, designated by the city, something,
Designated
another just,
designated covers it, but it's a good point. I think we should just add comma, as designated by the city.
right.
That's all you have to do.
I see you writing, so I assume you're going to restate this.
Yes, and I'll give you a copy.
He looks thrilled.
No,
But back to the, I think we didn't have a vote on mitigation means.
we have not, and I'll take that motion if you'll restate it as to how it would read.
That mitigation means such remedies as are approved by the city development officer in consultation with the city arborist.
Recommend approval.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McDuffie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Okay.
And then back to line 162, amend to read city arborist means the ISA certified arborist is designated by the city.
Recommend approval.
You have a motion to approve the drafting recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Moving on.
The next recommendation is lines 163 and 164. My recommendation is that we strike lines 163 and 164 and revert back, as originally drafted, this had building official, that we use the term building official where the term city development officer is used.
Okay.
And this is the issue about, I think it creates a ambiguity in our code.
I recommend we approve then.
Is there, do you want to address this, Nikki?
I'm not really sure the nuance there.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. but
Yes,
you do.
so,
Figure it out.
Just identify yourself, Nikki.
yes, so, Nikki Stotzenberger, Development Services Manager. So with the CRCRC, the P&Z, I know a lot went back and forth trying to make sure, as I am not a certified arborist by the ISA, that this was giving some flexibility that as the development officer, I was able to make decisions as that person and not just the building official. Councilwoman Brown, you and I had spoke, talking about what is the building official, and throughout many times in this code, it just depends on the section that we're talking about. It could be any one of our third parties, it could be me, it could be the city administrator, it could be anybody. It's kind of whoever is having that.
So you support this change to city development officer instead of building official, city building official?
No, it's vice versa.
No.
Did I do it wrong?
For me, I think the way it is written with the city development officer clarifies it a little bit more, laying out in this section, because you could still be talking about building official, who could be building official, meaning your city inspector building
Oh,
official,
okay.
or you still could be talking about your zoning building official. And so there's so many different definitions of what an actual building official is throughout our code.
So I'm confused. Do you want us to leave, do you like Ms. Brown's suggested
I have
amendment, or
a
do you want to leave it?
recommendation
Hold
I
on.
think resolves it.
Before you put my staff on spot, I'll take,
I think.
trying to keep her out of the fire here. So.
My understanding, in talking with Nikki before about this issue, is that we all want Nikki to be the one to do this
Just put her name
and
in.
have it done, in-house. I think the way to do that, instead of creating another ambiguity about building official, that we say instead of saying city development officer means, we say building official for purposes of this section means the city development officer. I think that's the way to do it, and you eliminate the conflict that the argument that could be made that the building official and the city development officer are different people. That's what I want to avoid.
Does that work?
I think, however, I know when this was drafted, it had started with where city development officer is put. It was in replacing city arborist. So there may be some points in here where city development officer is actually meaning building official. However, it also may be meaning city arborist. So I think it's gonna have to be thoroughly read through to make sure that it is, when it is saying building official, it is meaning the correct building official.
Yes.
But I do think
I
your
think that
change-
is the kind of review we
It-
need.
yeah, it just
We need
changes
that-
context.
We do need that review when we do this next draft.
So if you will clarify that in your motion,
All right.
and I'll give you, you have it?
I would strike lines 163 and 164 and replace with this language. Building official, as used in this,
For the purpose of this, for the purposes of this section.
for purpose of this subdivision,
Yep.
means the city development official.
Understood. That's your motion. Is there a second?
City
Is it-
development
Is it
official?
official or officer?
Yeah.
City development officer, sorry.
Got it. You have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion for drafting instructions and a second by Mr. Glasheen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Okay.
And then, another motion related, I move that within this proposed proposed ordinance, we replace the word city development official with the words building official, and throughout this proposed ordinance.
The entire ordinance?
Yes, unless it's otherwise,
Except for the section that we just changed.
No, she's saying even that section.
No,
She must replace city development officer with.
no, you can't change the one that says for purposes of this subdivision,
Right.
city.
no,
Building official
what my
is whatever.
motion, yes. Except for lines 163 to 164.
Right,
Yes.
Right, okay, right. We
Okay.
just keep doing
We
that.
know
And
what
just,
we're
if
doing.
you just do search and replace, then you screw it up, so.
Right.
You
you
have to do
accept
it, you
that part.
can't do this search and replace.
Right.
Right.
That's part of the
We're
instruction.
down to the point where you can't do search and
Okay.
replace on this.
Right.
All right, are we clear on that instruction?
And
Okay.
then I'd add a second, that we asked Ms. Stotzenberger, that, who'll soon be someone else, to advise us if she believes that should be city arborist or building official in this next
In
draft.
this next draft, okay. You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Okay. That gets us down to,
That gets us down to line 191.
okay,
In the existing code, there is a provision that property owners, if you need to put in a tree in mitigation, and you get your next door neighbor to agree to put that tree on their lot rather than yours, then there is this, beginning at line 191 through 195, the neighbor promises that they'll maintain that tree. I think we need to keep that language. And I would recommend that those lines be made a part of subsection C.
okay. You want to make that motion for
So
drafting
Wait,
instructions?
tell me when was that added and when was it removed? Was this already there? Or is it
This,
always there?
if you look at line 191 to 195, in this draft it's stricken. That means it was a part of the existing code,
Okay.
and I think it should be retained
Hmm.
for those instances where one neighbor agrees to take a tree on their property, and
Okay.
this tree is in mitigation of a protected tree that's been removed. We need to make sure we can enforce against that nice neighbor that they'll maintain that tree.
Fair enough.
Curious how that got
Does-
removed in the
does
first
that-
place.
Does that carry on to a purchaser of that? Like if the neighbor allows a new tree to be put in,
The owner of the property, so if a neighbor,
Runs with the land.
Comes with
if Kevin agrees to do it and Phil buys Kevin's property, it's on Phil,
okay. I
because
just
it's
wanted to
the
make-
owner of the property.
Only if you file the agreement in the deed records.
I was going to say, I'm not sure how you enforce that one.
Otherwise, the contract does not run with the land, so.
Right.
Well,
Maybe we need to add a new bullet point here.
All
Any
right.
such agreement shall be filed.
Even
I-
for them, you probably can't enforce it because
Right.
it's property issues. Maybe you can, I don't know.
I was joking.
I'm not buying Kim's property, that's for sure.
If you are, you're gonna get sued over the trees, that's for damn sure.
Okay.
The trees I promised.
are we clear on the motion?
We're clear on the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
The next change is on page 6, line 211 to 213. This provision says that if you have done your tree removal permit before there is a house under construction, that you can put the permit on the dashboard of the tree services vehicle. I think we removed that and required that the permit be on the lot.
Just like on the fence? What do you mean, somewhere?
A sign on the lot.
Sign on
It doesn't have to be on a fence, it can be on a, on a peg.
It's
like-
just during tree removal.
Yes.
That does not comply with our sign ordinance, which is 10 feet from the property line, or 10 feet from the curb. Can we change that first 5 feet to say 10 feet?
Is it literally just while they're cutting the trees down?
Yeah, it's
What's
only
the-
during removal. I would just leave it alone, cause it's only during removal. And so they're either gonna be on site during removal, or it'll be on their truck, or it'll be,
But you, if you're the neighbor and you're wondering who's cutting down this beautiful tree and you wanna ask about it, there won't be a sign on the lot to tell you
but the truck will be there.
only, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the truck will be there.
You can always call the city and say, hey, they're cutting down this big tree. Did they get a permit?
I don't know why it was ever allowed to be put on the dashboard of the truck.
Cause the idea is that if there's not, they have those boards up for all the permits when they're building the house, but this is if they're not building the house, all they're doing is taking down a tree.
But we
Then
also have a lot
you-
of situations where there's just a
With a demo permit.
the sign is about this big and it's
Mhm.
stuck in the yard. That's all of our
Right.
other permit signs.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a no on this one. Don't think it's necessary.
I'm okay with it for drafting, it's fine.
It'll show as a strike-through because that's existing language, so.
I'll move that we accept the drafting recommendation.
What?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Ms. Hudson. I have a question. Okay. So, okay, so they can still put it on the construction board. They can go put it on the construction board, otherwise they're displaying it in the yard. Which, so they'll choose the construction board. Otherwise, they're gonna have to go make a sign and hang it in the yard. But they'll figure it out. Okay, you have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. That moves us to,
The next changes are lines 214 to 227. As currently drafted, it reads, removal of a heritage tree in required yard space is prohibited unless. We don't really have a phrase, required yard space. I think this should be in a required yard. That's the way our yards are defined in the code. So that's the first change.
Move to adopt that recommendation.
you have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Next.
Then if you drop down to line 222 through 227, this says a heritage tree removal special exception provided for in this code will not be required for heritage trees removed from the buildable area. But such removal is subject to the tree removal permitting and replacement regulations provided in this code. So basically, this is the language that allows a heritage tree to be removed from the buildable area. And the question is, do we want that buildable area or building footprint?
I would say we had a little discussion about this
Or
earlier.
some compromise on those issues.
We had a little discussion about that earlier, and I was in favor of buildable area at first because, you know, it seems sensible that if they're not gonna build the house there, why should they have to cut down the tree? But then the testimony from the drafters and from the CRCRC saying that you're really just incentivizing people to just build out the whole buildable area, which they're all gonna do anyway.
Yeah.
And so I think it's okay the way it's written. I don't think we need to try to protect those.
Okay.
I'd like to protect them, but I don't think we practically can.
Well, and where I come out on this is that there won't be that many instances where you could, if a builder's gonna protect the tree in the buildable area, fine, you know. If they're not gonna protect a tree in the buildable area, we can protect the ones that are on the cusp.
Yep, on the
By
yards.
where the root zone is close enough to the yard to allow the tree to live. And I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So, but I think it is something we have to consider and think about and make a decision on. I know City of Austin protects trees unless they're in the permitted building area. Westlake protects them unless they're within the, well, I think they protect them even in the, I think you've got to get an exception there, so, for any heritage tree. So it's still generous compared to what our neighbors do in terms of protecting heritage trees. All right. So I would move that we not change, we keep the language as currently drafted within lines 222 to 227,
Second.
as in this draft proposal.
Great. All right, moving on.
All right. Next change, page 7, line 244 to 245. This says the administrator shall have the authority to determine whether documentation about whether a tree is dead or dying or diseased is in order and may consider specific safety situations in light of potential hazards. The phrase "in order," I would suggest we put in compliance with the requirements of this subsection.
Move to accept the recommendation.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries, okay. Moving on.
On page 8, lines 312 to 320, this has to do with the expiration of a tree removal permit. And it says that if permit for removal expires on the earlier of either 2 years after its effective date or upon removal of the protected tree, except that, and then there's exceptions for if there's a building permit issued. It seems to me that we want the permit to live beyond the removal of the tree because the permit probably has a condition for replacement trees. So I think we strike "or upon removal of a protected tree" and say it's got a 2-year permit except for what the current situations are.
I don't think expiration of the permit would affect anybody's obligation to fulfill the conditions under which the permit was granted.
Well, except this language says that the permit for removal expires upon removal of the tree.
But even
That's-
if the permit expires, it doesn't mean the conditions that were imposed on the grant of the permit expire. Those the conditions are, for lack of a better word, vest when the permit is granted. In other words, it's conditional. So if they remove that tree without complying with the conditions, even if the permit's expired, they're still in trouble and failed to comply. I mean, they've still violated the permit is what they've done. I mean, what do you do if they cut down the tree and then they don't plant the replacement trees and they say, we don't have to because our permit's expired?
So my question,
I don't think that's I don't
like
think
to-
that works.
identify yourself.
Nikki Stotzenberger, Development Services
I
Manager.
have a question for you.
Yes,
So if we remove this, how would that affect our system? Like, would it keep running in our system?
It would still keep running in the system because the permit is not complete or closed.
And we'd have to remember to go back and close out the permit 2 years later. So that's my concern.
This is current language.
Well, no, but it expires, current language expires.
This
Have
is,
to remove
so we're not changing anything here. We would just, this language is already in place.
I think he's saying if we leave the permit open for 2 years, they're gonna have to remember 2 years to go close it out.
That's what they're doing today. That's what I'm
That's what
saying.
you're doing today? Oh. Oh,
Yeah, it just remains open.
oh, well then,
Upon preference, I do like striking the upon removal of the protected tree because it is leaving the permit open as it is. It's just kind of adding language that shouldn't be there
Should we, like-
because
So do we just remember, and I'm coming less on the policy and more on the process of, so do we just have to, I guess we just check every once in a while to see what's still open and then kind of, it's just routine sort of maintenance of the system?
correct.
Okay.
we never say like, oh, the tree, we know that tree's down, so we'll just go ahead and close it out
No.
early. Never.
No.
This isn't unique to this permit.
No,
Every city
correct.
issues building permits and all sorts of permits, and under the law, you can't put an expiration date of less than 2 years, and you know, people just close out their permits after they do what they're authorized to do under the permit.
Can,
It's pretty
can a
standard.
resident or citizen come in and say, hey, I'm done with my permit, close it out, or is that not a thing?
Yeah, I don't know how it works
I mean, you could
internally.
do that, but you still have to go check to make sure the inspections or
I mean, I
the
guess
requirements.
nothing wrong with
are
having a
met.
bunch of permits open, I guess.
With building
In
permits,
my
it's
name?
pretty easy, right? You get a C of O.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody ever goes out and says, okay, now this permit is closed.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
All right, if Nikki's,
Charlie,
yeah, go ahead.
do you have a comment on if the permit expires on removal of the tree?
I don't have any issue with that because my understanding is that's the completion of what the purpose of the permit is for.
Well, if the tree's removed, there's mitigation requirements. You've got to
Right, but
plant,
I'm sorry, excuse
you've
me.
got to plant other trees.
Mhm.
So wouldn't the permit,
That's an obligation of the ordinance, regardless of the permit. And so they have to get the permit in order for
okay,
it to
I
happen.
get you. I get it. All right.
All right, if you're good, I'm
I
good.
will remove that motion. We'll keep the language as it is.
Well, you convinced me to remove it, so I'm good either way. So,
So that's what we're doing
do
anyway.
it, do it how you, yeah. Do you,
Charlie, talk to him.
Nikki, you would prefer it be out?
Yeah,
Yeah,
y'all's
it-
choice, y'all bring it.
it- For
Dealer's
me,
choice.
yes, I would say delete it.
All right, go for it. Do your, let's delete it.
Take it out or
Take it out.
take it out?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you also have to take out some stuff earlier, because it says a permit for removal of protected tree expires on the earlier of either. So we need to say
Okay, so
it
just-
expires
2 years
2
after.
years
the-
after its effective date.
Say take it out and make conforming changes, and I'll take the motion.
I propose that we remove the language in lines 313 and 314 upon removal of protected tree
And make conforming changes to the rest of
and
the.
make appropriate changes to the prior clause.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no, being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries, moving on.
Next change, page 9, line 343 to 346. We talked about this earlier, council, and I would recommend in the draft on line 344 that building footprint be replaced with buildable area.
You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no,
No,
being 4 ayes, 1 nay, the motion
'cause
carries.
I'm just not sure about that one yet.
For drafting instructions,
slow.
that moves us to 374.
Yes. On line 374, I think our reference there needs to be changed from 107-374D to 107-375.
Is that just a? explain that one, Ms. Brown?
Subsections have been renumbered, and I'm referring back to the subsection that should have been
Got it. Okay.
in here.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. Glasheen to make that conforming change. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. 5 ayes, no nays. Motion carries. Next.
Lines 384 to 385. This is just wordsmithing. If a protected tree has a trunk on a first property and its crest, I'd insert its crest and or canopy, strike that, extend to acceptant property. It
This is
just reads
mainly
better.
Grammatical. Okay.
Grammatical.
All right. You have a motion to make grammatical changes in line 384, 385. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Wait. This says if a protected tree is on property A and property B wants to do something that's gonna take down that tree, how can they take down a tree that's not on their property?
It's because removal
They've
is
gotta get a
defined as
permit.
critical root zone or trimming, disturbing more than 50% of the critical root zone or cutting more than 25% of the branches.
Right,
So
but
if they can't,
if the tree's on my property, I don't want my neighbor to be able to get a permit to take down my tree.
That's not gonna happen.
well,
This-
if your tree grows into their property and the branches extend in their property, they can cut your branches, but this limits their ability to cut it and requires them to get a permit if their cutting constitutes removal under the statute, or if they disturb the roots of your tree, like they go dig up and wanna put an underground tank in the setback next to in the root zones, it
Which
requires.
we're gonna
talk
stop that, right, but anyway.
Well, but it just means that they can't kill your tree by messing with the root zone or the branches without getting a permit.
Right.
Cause
But
right now they could,
But but this still allows them to do it if they get a permit.
if they get a permit, but they're allowed to do it now without a permit, because that's the law.
Yeah, and to be clear, none of this change affects that.
Right. This is existing
Yeah.
language.
I disagree with the whole section, but that's not my call.
We're just
So,
replacing roots with crez.
Yeah.
And it's just a little grammatical change there. But if you look at what constitutes removal under 107.371E, actually, that should be G. 107.371E should be 371G.
Noted. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no.
Oh, I'm I.
I've got
So
you.
no, because I didn't hear what we were going on.
You're just changing, you're adding the word its
Oh, yes.
and the word and or and
Sure.
striking that.
Okay.
And striking
I'm for
that,
its and ors and that.
yes.
It is.
And
pretty
then
straightforward.
107.3, then it line, the next, okay, sorry.
No, you're good. Move on.
At line 388 and 390, 107.371E should be 107.371G in both those lines.
Noted. We'll move on to line 400.
Okay, the next change is at line 406, and Charlie, this is a question for you. This says that an exception to these mitigation requirements may be granted by the city development officer after consulting with the city arborist and with approval of the zoning board of adjustment. And I'm not sure if that process is, can we do that? That way?
This is zoning, right? Is this zone?
This is zoning. This is in the zoning code.
Yeah, we could do it as a special exception.
Yeah, it probably needs to be noted as a special exception. to not give ambiguity to what that process would be at the Board of Adjustment.
I would-
Yeah.
It would require several things at the zoning board of adjustment in order for them to get an exception.
I can't hear you, Charlie.
I'm so sorry. It would require several things at the zoning board of adjustment in order for them to receive a special exception. One, a consultation with the city development officer and the city arborist with a recommendation to the ZBOA for it to be granted, and then the ZBOA making the findings of 1 and 2. And
So-
then
Is that a lawful process?
it's a lawful process.
Okay. We can move on, no change needed there.
Okay, moving on. Are we on?
The next change is on page 11, line 418. This is the permit application. It says that the survey is of all trees on the property that are 12 inches in diameter or more, including an indication of the crest of those trees, and then I added, and which of these trees are heritage trees? Just to make sure that we can require that that be on the survey, because there'll be different, somewhat different conditions for that than just a protected tree.
So is the drafting instruction then to,
Add the words at the end of line 418, and which of these trees are heritage trees?
Doesn't the tree survey show the diameter of all the trees?
I mean, it seems like it.
This says it shows all trees that are 12 inches or greater in diameter,
Okay.
but doesn't show the actual diameter.
Should probably note their diameter is what it should say. And then it should probably note that,
And the-
should say the survey should note their diameter, because otherwise you get an argument about what the diameter is, whether it's a heritage tree or not. And so that way they want to argue about that, they can argue with the surveyor and not with the city.
It says at least 12 inches in diameter.
Yeah, but the heritage tree requirement is much bigger, and the question is it a heritage tree?
If
or
they're gonna
not?
put the diameter on it, to me, it just seems like a bunch of little trees you don't have to like worry about like
No.
reporting like
Only
this
the
is
ones
3
that's
inches
bigger
or-
than
yeah.
12.
Yeah,
We're just saying on any tree that you do measure, mark on the tree survey that's bigger than 12, you should just put the
Okay.
diameter down,
Okay.
so we know whether it falls under a protected tree or heritage tree.
And the diameter of all protected trees.
Nikki?
Yes.
I was gonna say, if we could get that, just, 1073-7681, if we could kind of wordsmith that to make it sound a little, my brain is not working right now, but I understand the concept. You're wanting the protection trees, the protected trees listed, as well as heritage trees listed, anything above 12 inches or greater, including their CRZs, correct? Okay, can we wordsmith that?
Yes.
To make that work?
Yeah.
Because adding the, in which of these trees is a heritage tree.
Yeah, instead of adding that language, which does seem awkward, if we made a requirement that the tree survey note the diameter of all trees that are larger than 12 inch,
Okay,
that would solve it for us, because then we'd know by looking at the diameter whether it's heritage or protected.
okay, we can definitely wordsmith that
Okay.
one to
Okay.
make
I
it.
second that
I'll work.
motion.
So we have a motion by Ms. Sheen, second by Ms. Brown, with instructions given in the record that should be clear to Nikki. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries for the drafting instructions on line 418. Moving on.
On line 438, I would strike the language including approval of the building footprint. We're talking about the tree removal permit may be processed concurrently with the building permit, and the tree removal permit are processed concurrently, but the tree permit can't be approved prior to approval of the building permit, period. We don't need to have the statement about approval of the building footprint.
Oh, I see, yeah. Okay. That's a motion. It is now. Is there a second?
Second.
It is now. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. 5 ayes, no nays. Motion carries. Moving on.
Okay, page 13, line 508 to 511. This, we're now in the penalty provisions. This is existing language. It says that it's an offense for a person to hire, engage, or permit any person engaged in the business of tree planting, maintenance, or removal to perform such services on property in the city without a permit issued by the city pursuant to 18217 of this code. It's an offense to hire a person that's in the business without a permit, but it's not an offense to hire a person who's not in the business without a permit.
Or to cut it
If
down
you read this
yourself.
literally,
Or to
yeah.
cut- or to cut
Or
down
I
yourself.
can hire Phil to cut down my tree. So I suggest a little edit that says it's an offense for a person to hire, engage, or permit any person to perform tree planting, maintenance, or removal of trees on the property in the city without a permit issued by the city.
We don't have
which
to
is
have a
what we
permit
do.
to plant a tree.
I'm just using the language that's there and putting it in the,
Well,
how
but
about if we
if
come
we're
back with-
changing this, we should take out planting trees, cause we don't require a permit to plant a tree.
How about if we just come back with some general language that
well.
makes it an offense
This,
to
I
take-
need to answer her first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It doesn't require a permit to plant the tree. It requires that if you hire a person to plant the tree, they have to be a person that has a permit.
Why do you have to have a permit to plant a tree?
Yeah.
I wasn't here when this was adopted. I've always had the understanding that if you were having that any person, okay, I see what your point is.
If I wanna plant a tree in my yard, I should be able to plant a tree in my yard, and I don't need a permit.
Yes.
Okay.
And then
Because
that's,
I've
that,
planted
You're gonna
trees in my yard.
So if you're gonna hire someone,
Same.
if you're gonna hire someone, then I always understood there had to be if you had pruning done, it had to be a approved arborist or approved.
Maintenance and removal, I'm good with, but tree planting, I'm not
Okay.
good with.
which is a good segue to the suggestion that you were about to make.
Which is get rid of all these very specific, provisions regarding violations, and just draft a general provision that it's an offense if you fail to take any act as required by the code, if you take any action that's not that is not authorized by the code. That's usually how you do penalty provisions. You usually don't have all these lists of very specific items, and that way you'll cover everything.
Well, but I think this has some provisions that are unique to tree mitigation requirements.
But if those
For example-
provisions are in the code and and it's unique, and that uniqueness is you have to take some act, and we have a provision in here that says you fail to take some act that's required, that would be covered, right?
Well, let me give you an example. Look at subparagraph 5.
What line number would that be?
515.
Okay. I'm sorry, of this section, okay. Yes. I don't even know what this means.
I mean, if you sell the property, the buyer has to assume all the obligations of the permit.
To transfer property from which the removal of protected heritage tree has been permitted if all obligations, unless the transfer.
Have not then been fulfilled.
Well, why wouldn't we make this a requirement of the ordinance?
It is in there, we already did that if somebody
Well, if they do that,
sells it, they
that's what I
have
say,
to.
if they fail to take some act that's required. This
I
is
just haven't double-checked these provisions with an obligation in the ordinance itself.
Would you be okay if we did that and came back with, because I'm concerned that the way this is written, there's something else in here that's not being captured
Yeah,
because
it's
this
better
is so
to be
specific.
broader and catch
Yeah.
every potential violation than to list them all, and then we might not have listed one that was in the whole ordinance. A catch-all provision is better, I think.
Right.
That's
be-
usually how they
because
are.
The one that I noticed is that where it says you can't hire, the one we were just talking about, you can't hire, engage, or permit anybody to do tree maintenance or removal. We already have an exception in there. If there's an imminent danger, you can do that
It's a good point.
without having a permit.
It's a good point.
You can do it if you have an arborist prove it.
Right, but you don't
Yeah.
have to have a permit, and this says you have to have a permit. So, what Charlie's suggesting
Well,
would,
it's a different kind of permit. It's a permit for that the arborist has been certified.
I move
Not
we-
that the tree can be removed or planted or maintained.
I'd like to move we accept Charlie's drafting suggestion on this one.
I'm happy with that. I want to make sure, I know we have stop work provisions in here that I think are very important, and they're not just a penalty, so I don't want to give that up.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. If you don't love it, when it comes back, you can change it next month.
Yeah. And
Uh,
I would ask that, okay.
We could keep D and E.
Let's just let Charlie, you got a
Line-
motion on the table to let Charlie draft it, and I'm gonna have you vote on that. So,
And I would like for it to retain any special provisions that would not be captured by a simple fine.
got that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Good luck, Charlie.
Charlie, keep 545 through 552.
Yep, you can follow up with him after when he's drafting it.
Okay,
Moving on
that-
to, don't forget 566. That was a good catch. I'll just help you with this one. Change the date on line 566. All right, thank you, council, for those drafting instructions. Again, for the record, for those just now keeping up at home, none of those were adopted by council. They were all adopted as drafting instructions to staff and our general counsel, our city attorney, rather. Sorry, I had my work hat on. And with that, I think we're done with item number 12, unless someone has something else to add.
are we gonna go over the recommendations that P and Z had for changes in there?
Those should be in the document. Those are already in the,
Those were covered in the
Those
very
were-
first thing that we covered, and then the public comment was covered in the very second thing we did, and then you just all walked through the additional comments
Mhm.
by Ms. Brown. So we have, I think, everything now on the record.
Well, except that the one about the tree removal for diseased whatever is in pink on here, and it says that they recommend,
Which document are you on?
are you
Okay,
paragraph 1,
so
2,
it's-
3, or 4?
I am looking at
The P and Z memo?
yes, 3, the one that addresses section 107-375F.
I'm sorry, I can't follow where you are.
So in the amended ordinance,
So you're back in the, okay.
section 107-375F, that whole section is in pink.
I beg your pardon?
It's in pink.
That's line 147.
So like 357 to 368. It says adjust due to concerns that homeowners may be unfairly penalized for tree deaths that were not the homeowner's fault. So it does not say that it has been adjusted, it says that that wording needs to be adjusted.
You want to address that, Nikki?
That's a very good catch. Yes, so at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, they had requested as one of their recommendations to y'all to look at not penalizing homeowners when a tree has died. Correct. Yeah, when there was a dead tree, based on somebody else's act, and then now the homeowner on that property has to get a permit and do the replacements and all that. So they're just looking somehow for some relief in that, but they didn't have any specific language. But they wanted to bring up that concept to y'all
And
to,
is that the only item like that that's left hanging?
I
The-
believe, Ms. Brown?
And I think that issue is addressed on page 6 of the proposed ordinance, line 235 through 249. This is, if you have a diseased heritage tree, then this would say that you would get a report that that tree is dead, diseased, or dying. If it's confirmed by the city arborist, then it can be taken out and there's not a mitigation requirement. So I think there is a process for a homeowner to show that they're not responsible for the tree dying.
Yeah, it seems like that's the same language almost, and kind of, right?
Mhm.
And what-
I think
what's
we've,
the difference?
what I'm saying is, I think the
Yeah.
draft addresses that.
I wonder why they put that in there though. Did they just not see that before?
There,
Well, that is,
The only
So
thing is
many
I
yes.
see that it specifically says things like they don't need to, they can waive the tree replacement application
Yes,
fee and
uh-huh.
stuff.
Yes,
Mhm.
and, you were saying that it's waiving the fee or mitigation, but I think it's still, if somebody has, say,
Without, like you were saying, like if I had a house that was,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't
I know,
hear two
we're
conversations at once.
still thinking, I'm thinking of a story, trying to put it into perspective. Dave?
Dave Bench, One Randolph. I recall during the P and Z meeting where this was discussed that one of the P and Z members recalled a situation where a tree had died on their property and they had to get a permit in order to remove it, and they're at cost. And so the question was, well, why would you do that? Why would you need to have a permit in order to remove a dead tree? And so that's where that language came from. That was our recommendation, to include something like that, that it would essentially remove all, what would you call, liability against the homeowner if there's a dead tree that needs to be taken care of.
And I think the question would be, how do you show that
That a
Do
tree
you-
is in fact dead?
no, that the homeowner wasn't responsible for the death of the tree?
it doesn't matter if the homeowner's responsible, if the tree is dead.
Or a developer's killed it because it's in the yard and they don't want to keep it. You know, that's the other side of it. Do you have a process to make that, the homeowner have a, you know, what this language would, what the language currently would require is that if you have a heritage tree and it's dying and you want to take it out, or it's dead and you need to take it out, and there's another provision that deals with emergency trees being taken out. Does the homeowner need to get certification by an arborist? It's not a permit to take it out, but get certification by an arborist approved by the city development officer to demonstrate that they can take that tree out. If not, then we really don't have protection for heritage trees.
Yeah, no, and I don't have a problem
So-
with the arborist. I just, that was brought
That's-
up that they wanted it addressed. I'm a little concerned about that the certified arborist has documented at least 2 prior actions performed by the certified arborist within the last 3 years.
Existing language.
We're changing the existing language to improve the ordinance, so if we need to change it, it needs to be addressed now. I'm just thinking that is not
Where are you, Sarah? I'm sorry.
On pages 9 and 10, like, line 362 to 365.
And can you restate your concern there?
Well, it's not just that it's diseased or dead, and that it poses an immediate threat. You also, in order to get the replacement requirements waived, have to show that you have, that the arborist has to document that at least 2 prior actions were performed by the certified arborist. So it's not any arborist, it's like that arborist, within the last 3 years. So if the tree dies and you haven't done something
That doesn't make it,
for 3 years to fix it, then you have to replace.
I think the arborist union must have written that.
You think what?
the arborist wrote that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know personally me, like, I wouldn't know if my tree's dead or not, and then I would wake up and be like, oh, it's dead. And I wouldn't have known for the past 3 years that I should have.
I think what should be happening here is that, it should read after canopy on line 363, there should be a period. And then there should be if the arborist has documented, then the city development officer may reduce or waive. I think that's what it's intended, how it's intended to read. It's not that you have to show you've done 2 years of work on a tree that's dead. Yep. So that's the existing language. I didn't write it.
Right.
You're saying that.
Well, but P and Z was concerned about this language, so I'm okay with us.
Do you want us
moving,
to-
moving on, and I can
Do you
take a
want
look
us-
at this and suggest something when we bring
Why
this
don't we
back.
just plan on having some changes to this, and we'll leave
Yeah.
it somewhat vague as to what that's gonna be.
Right, that's fine.
Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that we ask our city development officer to take a look at that paragraph and make a recommendation.
Perfect. That is noted and what we shall do, and I see her making notes. Okay, we will do that. Any other
And
changes?
then I move that we bring this back to the council at the April meeting.
Back in April, you have a motion to bring agenda item number 12 back at a time certain at the next regularly scheduled council meeting in April. Correct. All those, is that
So moved.
that's the motion? Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to 13, discussion and possible action on amending chapter 107, section 107-76, minimum required depth of width of yards related to residential side yard projections. Recognize Ms. Brown to lay out this agenda item.
Council, you have seen this item before. We've had a public hearing on it. This is a provision that clarifies our code with respect to what kinds of projections or other building features can be extended into a required yard. This would limit a building feature other than a roof or an eave to an extension of no more than 2 feet into a required yard, and that in addition, no building feature other than an eave or roof extension may be closer than 10 feet from a property line. So, and then it keeps the existing language that eaves or roof extensions can extend into a side yard a depth of 33% of the side yard.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Is there a motion on this before we have continued discussion?
Motion to,
Do we get public comment before we make a motion?
We can. Come on up.
Alex Robinette, 2500 Hatley. I admire you guys staying sharp this late at night because I'm getting tired. But that particular sentence about projections can be a bay window 10 feet or less. This is something that I have continued to bring up. I've tried to bring it up multiple times to P&Z. I tried to do it at CRC, URC. My concern about that, the way that sentence is written, about you can have a 10-foot bay, there's no limitation on the height or how many you can have. So if you've already built out, and I'm thinking like a builder, if you've built out your 10-foot side setback, you can build up to 10 feet on the other side, provided it's a 10-foot bay window. But what if you have a 1-foot gap and another 10-foot bay, and you know, and so on? And is it 1 story or is it 2 stories? So, to me, I think you need to have some restrictions on how many bay windows you can have and how high they can go.
Or we could get rid of bay windows.
Or we could require that all parts of a building be within the building area.
That was my recommendation to CRC, is that you limit how much
'Cause they could
projections
have
can
a
be.
bay
I'm
window.
sorry, I didn't hear the last of your
I
sentence.
apologize. I had recommended that nothing project beyond 12.5 feet besides an eave or a roof overhang, but no habitable space.
I'm getting confused here.
Yeah.
This is, there's a prohibition on anything going in the 10-foot side yard, including a bay window.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a bay window outside.
No. Yes, you're right. Okay.
Yes, so you have a bay window, it's not within a 10-foot setback. What would the limitations be that you would recommend?
Well, if you've built out your 10-foot side setback, and now you're on your 15-foot side setback, you can build, well, you're right, I see your point. Yeah.
You could only build 2 feet
You can
into
only
that
build, yeah, so then you're 12,
15-foot setback
13 feet, yeah.
with a,
Yep.
you could-
You're right, my bad.
yeah, you could, that's why the no building feature,
Beyond, yeah,
other than a roof or
Yeah.
eave or roof extension, can be closer than
Yeah.
10 feet.
Yeah.
So that would include bay windows. Are you okay with bay windows on the 15-foot side or the front or the rear
mm-hmm,
if they are outside of the required yard?
yeah. I mean, it is a point to consider if you do want any restrictions on the amount of bay windows or the height, because you could effectively change what that side setback is by the amount of building, even if it's the 15-foot side setback or the 12.5-foot side setback.
What you could do in the you can't do it in the 10. In the 15-foot
Right.
setback, you could have a bay window,
13 feet from the property line, but how many?
you could have a 2 feet. A building feature other than an eave or roof extension may not exceed into any required yard more than a maximum of 2 feet.
What if we just took out line 43 and 44 and don't allow bay windows to project into the side yards? I mean, you can still have a bay window, you just
Well, this
remove the
doesn't
whole-
allow that.
Hang
It
on
just
just a
said-
second, sorry. You could still have a bay window, but you'd have to set it back 2 feet from the property line, I mean, from the setback line, if you wanted to have a bay window, so that it wouldn't project into the setback.
That's one way to solve it.
I don't think that's what it does.
No, it's not what it does. I'm suggesting that you could delete the section of 43 that allows bay windows to project into the yards. And then I'm saying if somebody still wants a bay window feature, they can have it. They just have to build the rest of their house 2 feet further back from the side yard line. or front or backyard line.
Okay, here's the rules. As,
Right. Let's just, that's
a lot simpler.
can
the line 43 and 44 doesn't have to do with how far a bay window can go into a setback. It just says it can be habitable.
yeah, but
It's-
all bay windows are habitable
I
space.
think it says the 2 foot above that.
But the,
Any building feature other than an eave cannot extend into any required yard more than a maximum of 2 feet.
but the next sentence, you can't read that without the next sentence.
Right.
No building feature can go into the 10-foot side yard.
Yeah.
How about
So-
But you're still wanting to protect the side setbacks that we have, and so.
What
if-
what I'm missing is what restriction other than those two do you want to put on a bay window? You can't have a bay window projection into any yard?
That's what I suggest. I'm suggesting that we take line
I'm
43.
trying to clarify what it is you would want.
I'm trying to say that you might want to consider restricting the number and height of bay windows that you allow that project over a side setback. Even though you can't go past the 10-foot, if you're on the 15-foot, you could have basically a home that's closer to 13 feet, depending on how many bay windows you have and how tall they are. And they are restricted by
Yeah.
tenting.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So my suggestion is on line 43, which is paragraph F, that we say projection shall not contain habitable space, period, and delete the clause that says except for bay windows 10 feet wide or less.
Okay.
That's my suggestion.
And
That's a
that still
motion.
would allow bay windows within the 15-foot setback to project 2 feet into a 15-foot setback. Or,
No, it wouldn't. It would only allow bay windows if the bay windows don't project into the setbacks.
no. If you read the first sentence.
I think he's offering an alternative. Or maybe.
I think we're trying to establish what the existing, what this language does, and then if we want to change it. But the first sentence says, any building feature may not extend into a required yard more than 2 feet.
But what I'm making clear is that no extensions can contain habitable space.
Right.
Which means no bay windows.
That would preclude a bay window in the 2 feet.
Correct.
Okay, I'm with you.
Now I'll accept your motion.
Okay, so.
But is that what, I don't think we've finished discussing yet.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah, but we,
Is that what you think, is that what you want to accomplish?
I don't, I don't have a particular set idea. I just felt like that the amount of bay windows should be restricted. How overall, I don't
Okay.
personally object to a bay window over a side yard setback, but I object to how much that could become. So,
Width-wise and extension?
well, we've restricted the width, but that doesn't mean you can't have multiple.
We haven't restricted width.
We've restricted the 10-foot.
We have restricted the extension into the yard,
It's-
but width along the length of the building.
Is restricted to 10 feet for the bay window.
but you could have 5 of them.
Yes. Yeah, 43 and 44.
I'm sorry, there's 3 conversations going on, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it.
There is a restriction on how wide your bay window can be if it projects over 2 feet.
Okay,
And that is at 10-foot width. But there's no restriction on its height. Like, is it a
That's-
2-story tower? Or there's no restriction on how many you can have.
where is the restriction on the width? I want to make sure
43
we're
for bay
getting this down.
windows, 10 feet wide or less. Yeah.
That doesn't say anything about the language we just took,
Yeah, it says 10 feet wide for the window.
but that doesn't restrict it.
10 feet, yes, it does. set for bay windows 10 feet wide or less. Yes, that is the restriction.
What that says is that a projection that is a bay window of 10 feet or less can contain habitable space. That's what that says.
But
That's, and otherwise, that's what that says. It doesn't say you can't have a bay window wider than 10 feet.
So, we need to define habitable space.
I don't think,
If a bay window has space inside, I mean, that's inside your house, right? It's all habitable, right? Any space inside a bay window on the inside of the house is habitable, because like, up to your ceiling is habitable. Even if you're not walking around up there, that's part of your habitable space. So, I don't know what,
It assumes it's habitable, because it says it can't be habitable except as a bay window, so.
yeah.
well,
It doesn't, the literal language doesn't restrict
Can we just,
the width of the bay window. So when we use width, we're talking about along the side of the building. When we use extension, we're talking about into the side yard or into a yard. So you would, if you can't extend into the 10 feet, and if you can extend only 2 feet into the 15-foot side yard, is that okay, or do you need something, do you recommend something more?
I personally don't mind projecting 2 feet over the side setback, but as I read this, and if I read this one way and everybody else is reading it a different way, we have a problem, because this is too open for
Yes.
interpretation. I read that there's no limit on the number of bay windows you can have. I read this as I can be on my 15-foot setback, or let's say I'm doing 12 and a half. I can go 2 feet in and 10 feet down. And then that's the restriction. But that doesn't say how often I can do that or how high I can go.
And what would be your recommendation on that restriction?
I would at least restrict it to 1 floor, because I mean, to me, I
One
don't think of a
floor,
bay,
a bay win- I-
1 level.
one
Like,
lo- That's height.
yeah, that's height.
How many along the wall?
I don't know.
you know what?
That's what we
it
can't
seems-
write it unless we
Yeah,
have
I
a
know, well, that
recommendation.
was,
Yeah.
I'm bringing it forward to you guys to see if it feels like something that needs to be restricted or not.
Okay, can we time out, because we're round and round here.
Timeout accepted.
To me, there's 2 ways to make this much simpler. The first one is either just to say projections shall not contain habitable space, period. And so if you have a bay window, it has to be within the building setback. And number 2, and the one that I prefer, is just to say, your whole house has to be within the setbacks. All
Except for
parts
the
of-
eaves.
Not even that.
Okay, well, in
all parts-
Texas, you
all-
need eaves, and I think it's helpful.
Well, you can have eaves,
Yeah,
just have them inside the setback. Because
that's a whole nother section that we could debate. Let's just stick to bay windows and get done with that if you don't
Well-
mind.
except that we also have,
I'll take that as a second of my motion that we amend line 43 to say projection shall not contain habitable space, period, and delete the rest of the
right,
sentence.
that's what I'm saying, that is one option.
That
I'm
was my
also,
motion earlier.
So
and
that would
that's what I'm
mean-
saying, I'm taking that as a second.
Yeah, I think I'm getting up to speed.
Mr.
I'm-
Parliamentary
I
Inquiry.
haven't accepted the motion yet, but I'm happy to at any moment. So
No.
I'm trying to let
Okay.
everybody talk.
So
I'm-
if,
I'm-
if,
But hold on, but you still have the floor.
I was saying, I'm also concerned about allowing the roof overhang 33% of the required setback. That means instead of 10 feet from the property line, your roof can be 6 2/3 feet, like 6 feet 8 inches from the property line. And the house next door to you can be 6 feet 8 inches from the property line. And we have had wildfires going crazy in California, in Fredericksburg, in every place else, the closer we put houses together, the more likely they are to transmit fires. And so
But-
we're allowing them to get closer and closer and closer together.
But this came up at CRCRC, and there was a concern that you're creating a perverse incentive to eliminate roof overhangs, and roof overhangs are desirable because they increase shade of the house, energy efficiency, and such.
And
And
so, and so do trees, and so if you overhang that closer, then you eliminate space for trees as well, so.
I think the standard was always a 2-foot overhang is, just kind of architectural standard allowed, a 2-foot roof overhang. This is a little bit more generous, the 33%, whatever, but
Be 3.5 feet in a 10-foot
yeah.
side yard.
I don't mind reducing it to 2 feet.
I don't either.
No?
No,
What? Tell us why.
No, just, no,
because 2 feet doesn't do enough.
Okay.
In this state,
Well,
it doesn't do enough.
you can put whatever kind of overhang you want to, just put it inside the buildable area.
All right,
I'm telling
okay,
you, Dave.
I would like
Anyway.
council to take action on this tonight, or not, but I do need a decision on that. I'll recognize you, Mr. Bench, as
Thank
chair.
you,
of
thank
P&Z.
you. I think that what Councilmember Glasheen proposed makes sense, no habitable area. The reason why we have some extensions going out into the setbacks with outside of the 10-foot setbacks is because we want to allow chimneys to be out there. That's it. Essentially, that's all we're trying to do. A lot of people in P&Z thought that that we still needed to have bay windows. Me, I don't care. If it becomes a design feature, yeah, that's right, bring it in. But as far as roof overhangs go, there is no incentive for a builder who is trying to maximize their square footage to put broad roof overhangs in and then close in their house to something into the buildable area. There's no incentive to do that. That's wasted money to them. And what we should be doing is looking at our codes and trying to figure out ways to improve energy efficiency. That's future thinking. And including that in this ordinance, allowing the more than 2 feet, allowing 33%, that's future thinking. And fires are not spreading because of overhang to overhang. They're spreading because people put their trees too close to their house. That's what's spreading. That's where the embers are going. They're catching the trees on fire. That's what's going on.
That's not true.
Okay, we're not debating it. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question.
I have a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Hang on, I have a question
Hold
about
on.
that. Could somebody make a 5-foot roof overhang on the 15-foot setback and basically make it like a porch? No, an outdoor porch, like you're making an outdoor patio with the overhang.
But it would not have structural support.
Right, it would just overhang, no posts.
You can't lever over it, sure, why not?
Okay. I'm just asking.
Okay, first, I denied Mr. Glasheen's motion earlier, so I'll recognize you for a motion if you want one. If not, I'll recognize Ms. Brown.
I have a motion to amend line 43, paragraph F, to say projections shall not contain habitable space, period, and delete, except for bay windows 10 feet wide or less, period.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by
Second
Ms.
for purposes of discussion.
Hudson, second and first, but I'll still give you the discussion.
Okay. I would amend the motion to approve the proposed ordinance as drafted with the change at line 43, putting a period after space. Instead of just approving that one line, let's approve the ordinance.
Yeah, okay. Accept the amendment.
Okay, so the amendment is amended, or the motion is amended, to place a period in lieu of the comma on line 42 and accept ordinance number, and adopt ordinance number 2025-03-19-13. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
Being 4 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 14, discussion and possible action regarding new proposed code section for protection of utility easement. Ms. Brown, recognize you for your motion, for your agenda item.
I am going to recommend that we don't take up this discussion tonight. It's pretty late. I think we need to have more discussion on this soon, and that we bring it back at the next council meeting.
You have a motion by I'll treat that as a motion, Ms. Brown, to bring back agenda item number 14 to a time certain, that being next month's April regularly scheduled council meeting.
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. Robinson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ms. Brown, would you like us to prepare a one sheet for you for this agenda item for next month that incorporates your memo?
My memo, I would love that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll do that and note it as Ms. Brown's one page. Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 15, discussion and possible action regarding maintenance of the baseball fields and replacement of the sprinkler system. This is Mr. Glasheen's agenda item. Recognize Mr. Glasheen.
All right, I just want to give council an update of what I know about the issue. As you guys know, I've been interested, and along with Phil McDuffie, in trying to improve the maintenance of the grass on the fields at the park. And we've done a lot of work on that, including trying to get the sprinkler system to operate regularly, fertilizer, weed control, some, soil amendments, and some plugging that we've done. And been working with Mr. Izzy Parra and the maintenance crew on these issues, and they've done a great job of implementing the recommendations of Site 1, which is the former John Deere Landscapes name. And they're following the program, but if you'll remember, we did, I think a little over a year ago, ask for the council to budget some sum of money, I think about $20,000 for sprinkler system upgrades and repairs. And the system was a problem from the beginning because it had inadequate coverage in that the sprinkler heads are spaced too far apart, but also we had no map of the existing valve locations or even the line locations. And a lot of it, we replaced some of the controller issues that we had where different people were accessing the controller, and we've isolated the controller and allowed baseball to have their own controller for the little 2-minute wedding that they like to do on the fields before their games. We tried to reduce the controller issues, and we did that. And then we've had 2 different companies come out and try to assess the system and make recommendations. One of the guys is a independent contractor who is actually, his full-time job is maintaining Zilker Park sprinkler system. And so he came over on a part-time gig, hourly, and he spent a good bit of time mapping the system and consulting with Johnny in our maintenance department, with Izzy, Mr. Parra. And their conclusion, Mr. Parr's conclusion and recommendation, is that we replace the sprinkler system on the ball fields. He said that it's too difficult to maintain the system that we have. It's old. It's not mapped. The real big problem is that the head spacing isn't really correct. And then the other problem is we've got a lot of pressure fluctuation issues. And we're going to need to have a new system. Mr. Parra is getting a couple of estimates or recommendations from a couple of different companies, and we'll bring that back to us at some point in the future. But I expect it'll be a substantial sum of money, and it's something that I've already alerted the Park Commission to get their input on where we go to Melissa Morrow, the chair, and got a thumbs up on a text from her. And then also spoke to Colin Harvey at RCDC and said that we might possibly be coming to them about paying for that sprinkler system update. And also I should back up just a little bit and say that I did meet with the president of WEA, the Baseball Association, about field maintenance and what we could do to make it better, and with Chad Smith, the former president of the Park Commission, who's also heavily involved in baseball. The three of us had met to talk about what we could do to improve the ball fields, and their consensus too was that this was a great plan to move forward. You know, when it comes down to it, my standard for maintaining these ball fields is they ought to look as good as the Austin High baseball field or as good as the Lions Club golf course, and they just don't. And despite our efforts to address every other maintenance issue, the sprinkler system is really the weak link in the process of trying to have good quality turf. So anyway, I just wanted to alert you that that's kind of what's going on. It's not any action item for tonight, but just there may come back some estimates and some discussion in the future.
Thank you for that update. Ms. Brown, you have a question?
The agenda item just talks about sprinklers for the ball fields. What about the rest of the park landscaping?
That's a great question, and you know,
I don't know if the two are tied in on the current system or not.
That's part of the problem, and what and that's part of the problem is we can't run the ball fields without running a lot of the other park, and we end up overwatering a lot of the other park because we're trying to put enough water on the ball fields. And so that's why we want to have a system that is separated from the rest of the park, that just valves that just run the ball fields. And then even within that, a separate valve that just sprays the dirt in the ball fields, like on the girls softball field, so that when the baseball folks come out and want to play and they want to wet that dirt, they'll have their own dedicated valve to just do that, and their own controller where they can turn that on and wet the dirt without messing with the rest of the sprinkler system. And there may be adjustments that need to be made to the rest of the park, but right now, you know, this is driven by functionality, and right now, unless we have a problem to fix, there are things that I think that need to be fixed for the sprinkler system and the rest of the park, but those are other issues. There are sprinkler heads that are placed in areas that contain gravel, for example, down by the playscape area. There's sprinkler heads there that water dirt, and that's not a good system. I don't know how often they're running, but there are places that are too wet and some that are too dry. But I think that the critical starting point is to get the ball fields functional and separated from the rest of the system. And then I think we can go, if we have success with our contractor and the project, then we can go and look at, well, what can we do and should we do for the rest of the park? I'm afraid if we try to take on the entire park sprinkler system at once, it's not necessary, because it's actually easier to deal with a system if it's scaled down a little bit and it's on a separate valve system and controller system. But also, it's just much more doable to get something done, that we don't expand the scope of it, you know, so much that it becomes difficult to get done. But I do think it makes sense, once we get through this process, to then look at the rest of the park and see if things need to be adjusted, and whether it can be done by adjustment or whether we need to replace the system. I don't see any indication yet that we need to replace the rest of the system in the park, but we do need to on the ball fields.
Do we bill the WIA for the water, or do we?
No,
Is that
under our lease, we're obligated to do maintenance of the fields, all the maintenance. That's our obligation. And that's one of the reasons why we've tried to step up the maintenance with fertilizer and weed control and better watering, because the fields were so poorly maintained, in my opinion, 2 years ago, that looking at them, somebody could arguably say that we were not fulfilling our obligation to maintain those fields. And so we've stepped up and tried, you know, Phil and I have worked on that with our Public Works Department to try to step it up, and at least, you know, that's why I say I personally have a standard we're trying to achieve, which is to be comparable to similar facilities, and we're not there. You know, we don't compare to even Zilker, which gets heavy use, or, you know, our grass quality is, it's way better than it was, and I'm real proud of what we've accomplished in terms of improving it, but it could be a lot better. And the one thing that we're running into that we can't overcome is the sprinkler system.
And I do appreciate you doing, both of you doing as much work as you're doing on it. And I do think getting some of the bids and getting a sense of cost, and having that in hand when we get back into our budget season, this seems like it would be well suited for an exceptional item, if we have a good grasp of what we're talking about in terms
Or
of cost.
RCDC,
Also that.
which they have got lots of money, and this is a great project for them, in my opinion, but we'll see if they.
Yeah,
agree
well,
to-
and they have started setting aside a significant portion for.
And they have, and I appreciate RCDC's effort, involvement and willingness to fund park improvement projects. I think a lot of us appreciate that. And I think that especially if you give them a good project that makes sense, that's, actually, creates an obvious benefit, that they tend to support it. So
Great.
this might be one of those. As
Yep.
opposed to just, hey, give us half your money.
You're right. Yeah, no, that's great. Before we move off of this agenda item, Michaela, will you come up to the microphone? I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. It'll be fine. Just work with me. Hang with me where I'm going.
Okay.
So typically, we're posted here for discussion and possible action regarding maintenance of the baseball fields. What we're not posted for tonight is a discussion and an approval for the Easter festivities that take place in the park. We missed that, and we got late notice, and so we missed the posting for it, so it's not before you. If we wait until next month to post it, then it would be 3 days before the event, and not giving the Rollingwood Women's Club time to make their plans. So my question for you, Michaela, is if the maintenance of the baseball fields, if we assume that there is going to be a park, our park is going to be used for Easter festivities, do you foresee the maintenance of the baseball fields being an issue on that?
No, I do not, Mayor.
Great, good. I'd be happy to take a motion from council to ensure that no maintenance of the baseball fields interferes with the planned festivities by the Rollingwood Women's Club for Easter on the date that they have provided to the city.
What is it? What, do we know the date?
I do.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a bunny? I hope there's a bunny.
There actually will be a bunny. Let's see here.
That needs to not be interfered with by the maintenance of the baseball fields.
Correct.
Now, we run the risk of having voidable action if it's not properly posted, so we don't.
It is properly posted.
Easter could be
I'm just-
voided.
It's going to be.
Easter
You're
could be
voiding the Easter
retroactively.
bunny.
If you so make a motion, you would say.
Let's do it quickly.
All right.
For clarification, the extravaganza will be on Saturday, April 19th at 9 a.m. sharp at the Lower Park and Pavilion.
So moved.
Your motion, the motion that I hear from Mr. Clashin is that, what was that date again?
April 19th.
The April 19th event that will be held for Easter in the park should not coincide with any maintenance of the baseball fields.
That is the motion.
You have a motion by Mr. Clashin. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Clashin, a second by Ms. Brown. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. We'll ensure that that Easter festivity goes off without a hitch and without any interference with the baseball fields. Okay, any other agenda items, any other items on agenda item number 15? Hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 16. Discussion and possible action on the purchase of up to 5 license plate readers in an amount not to exceed $15,000 to monitor roadways entering Rollingwood. This is Mr. Glashin's agenda item. Recognize Mr. Glashin.
So it just, we heard from Chief Munoz about, about potential for license plate readers. Had some discussion about it here before at council maybe 6 months ago. And then we had some discussions offline about it when when the chief was briefing me on operations of the department and concerns about break-ins and such. And so I posted it to give the chief an opportunity to tell us I know you've been talking to vendors about proposals, and I posted this just so you could give us an update, and maybe we can take some action if it's ready.
That is correct. I mean, I actually prefer to kind of table this until I can kind of gather some more information.
Okay.
I do have a meeting with Flock next week to start kind of some analysis of where they would recommend, if we did go with cameras, where they would recommend that we put them. Because what they do too is they also look at surrounding areas cameras to where they would eliminate, maybe we don't need to put one because it would be captured by, let's just say Westlake Hills,
Right.
that type of thing. So, but that way it would be more like an informed decision versus
Sure.
just, let's just throw cameras all over the place. And like I said, they're looking at our raw data as far as like burglaries and stuff. So like I said, so that process is starting next week. And then that way, like I said, then we can gather whether they're gonna be put on Bee Caves Road or they're gonna be put strictly in the city, that type of thing, and I can propose that stuff to you.
Okay, that's great. And I just wanted to get on the agenda and put it on the agenda next time so we could continue the discussion as you gather information are ready for us to take some action on a specific proposal. We'll be able to. But I wanted to just also air a couple of thoughts about what I've learned from talking to you and others and research and people in the community about the cameras, is that Austin has them, Westlake Hills has them. We don't have them. What I understand they can do for you is give you real-time information alerts if a car that's been reported as stolen comes into or leaves Rollingwood, which is some useful information for you. The other thing it can do for us is that if there is a criminal incident and somebody identifies a vehicle with their home security camera, those home security cameras often don't have enough resolution to capture a license plate. But if you have the description of that car, then you could go correlate it to the license plate reader and identify who that car is registered to. So if somebody breaks into 10 vehicles and steals a lot of property, and you know it's a mid-'80s Toyota with blacked out windows and a red car, you can go to your cameras, identify the owner of that vehicle, and issue a warrant on that basis. Is that?
That's correct. I mean, it would require a little bit more investigation to make sure, like, we do have the correct vehicle and different
Right.
things like that. But yes, I mean, so that is an investigative tool that definitely could lead to warrants and us finding who the suspect vehicle is.
And I understand that there was an incident, I don't know when that was, maybe 2 years ago, when somebody drove here from out of state and was gonna go create some mass casualty event at Tesla, I think. Remember that?
That is correct.
And that person was tracked using these license plate readers, and I think was actually arrested in our Randall's parking lot down on Bee Caves Road, if
That is correct.
if I'm remembering correctly. So, you know, I hate for us to be the missing link between Austin and Westlake when we're tracking some buddy who's threatened a mass casualty event.
Right, and so I just want to kind of explain what the process also is like I said, they do an analysis, but then Flock will also send a representative to the council meeting. That way, any questions that you guys have can go directly to the actual vendor regarding any type of, like I said.
But generally, for our purposes of sort of thinking ahead, it would take probably about 5 cameras at $2,500 a piece, and that's probably an annual fee, something in that ballpark.
It's actually, they're $3,000 a piece for per camera, and that's what you pay annually. And then you do have to pay an implementation fee, which is $650 per camera, depending on if they're on residential roadways or if they're on TxDOT, it's $1,250.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Other considerations that would need to be taken into account would be electricity to, you know, getting.
So they are solar, so it doesn't require any type of utility.
Okay. All right. So we'll keep this on at your discretion. I'm not totally sold on it yet.
Correct.
But,
And so that's the other thing is, and that's why I don't want to put the cart.
And it is somewhat, I'm not going to say controversial, maybe is the wrong word, but I would encourage a robust discussion about it because I do think there are mixed feelings on the topic.
That is correct. That's why I said I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse. I want to make sure that we also have policies set in place to make, like our response policies and different things like that before we propose anything.
And,
like
and I think you should think about that and bring that forward whenever we do hear a recommendation from Flock about what they'd like to sell to us. And, you know,
Correct.
talk about, well, how would you use it?
Correct.
And even a policy on privacy. I know, for example, Lubbock City Council just had to pass a new rule on policies on how that information will be used and who can access it. So I'm
Perfect.
sure Flock has standard policies they'd recommend.
I'm sure they do, but I'd actually going to document and look at Lubbock too to see how they protect that. So it's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Glasheen. Any further action on this for this evening?
No.
Okay, moving off of agenda item number 16, moving on to agenda item number 17. Updating discussion on the March 26, 2025 joint public hearing regarding an ordinance amending Chapter 107 of the City of Erlinwood Code of Ordinances related to residential building height and height measurement. Ms. Brown, recognize you for your agenda item.
Okay, put this on the agenda to update the council. The P&Z, we had planned this public hearing as a joint hearing with the council and the P&Z. The P&Z has, several of the members are not going to or cannot, at least now, tell us that they can attend. So there's less than a quorum of P&Z members who have committed to be at this public hearing. The P&Z voted at their most recent meeting that they will have their public hearing May 6th. And so they, at the last P&Z meeting, the third-party vendor consultant, Alter Studio, made a presentation. And the council, the P&Z, took questions on that presentation. When we were setting up the public hearing, we thought we'd have that presentation together with P&Z. So I would recommend that you take a look at the P&Z meeting from last week to hear their questions for the Alter Studio, their questions for the consultant and responses. We will hear that. The Alter Studio will be at the public hearing next week. And I'm expecting the members of the P&Z that can attend to attend, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we can get one more across the line and have a quorum. As you know, the state law requires that there be a public hearing before action can be taken by the council on the recommendation on building height. So right now, P&Z will not be able to have a public hearing until their May meeting, their May 7th. So I just wanted to let you know those changes from what our expectation had been, and to recommend that you take a look at the P&Z question and answer with Alter Studio. We'll also, there's been a request from P&Z that will be on the agenda for that public hearing, which is some further work by Alter Studio. So the council, it will be, what we've asked is that the agenda have that as a discussion item for action once the council's heard the Alter Studio proposal, whether you want further analysis from Alter Studio. So I just wanted to update you on what to expect next week.
Thank you. Step right up. You can have two.
I just wanted to give you an update as to how that P&Z meeting went. As you know, we did hire Alter Studio to come in and do 3D projections of the parallel plane and the segmented tenting.
I'm sorry. I thought you were just going to comment on the March 26th.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
But we're not posted to have an update, and so I would encourage you to come to the meeting on the 26th and give.
We'll
the
be there
update.
on the 26th.
Perfect.
I am one of the people who
One
will
of
show.
those. Great.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and I'm sorry to cut you off on that.
That's cool. I don't have your fancy footwork.
Well, and I will say, I will do my best, council, to be there on the 26th, but in all likelihood, your presiding officer will be Pro Tem Hudson, so. With-
Can I ask him?
Yes, ma'am.
A question
Mhm.
about the notice that came out on that? Was the wording on that notice statutory requirements?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, that is
The,
what,
the one that says that that may prevent you from being able to use your,
yep.
that is horrible.
You should start reading some of the current ones that's been produced.
I can
So
confirm that.
inflammatory and just false.
I will,
And it
I will not
says
comment.
you can't use your property even if the zoning change doesn't have anything to do with use.
Yeah, I mean, that, I read that and
It's-
went,
Yes.
no.
that is the statutory requirement.
Let's just,
I'm getting emails.
And-
well, that's what I was gonna say. Let's
Well,
just get everybody
and
way worked up
now
about
that
something
now
that's
that
not
we
even
have
true.
now that we have a requirement to have another public hearing, it's going to go out again.
I know, that's
So
just-
that's why I think we need to encourage our P and Z to
How can
meet
we,
jointly
how
with the
can we do
council.
that? How can we do that?
I think it will take some creative thought.
I mean, because
All right, we were so close to adjournment, everyone,
Yes, we
so
Well,
close.
this is, you know, it's an issue. I think we need to encourage that, and I hope you'll speak to those P and Z members you know and encourage them. I'll say, and Dave, keep me honest, I'll say that their view is that they want to develop their own proposal and bring it to the council. And I've took the time at that meeting to say, the council wants, we wanted this joint public hearing to include you because we want to hear your concerns and your questions for the consultant.
yeah,
And so we need to bridge that gap somehow.
I would rather see that the May meeting be another joint public hearing instead of them having a May 6th meeting and then us having a meeting, 10 days later.
Well,
Because I really want to I want them to have to vote and make a recommendation one way or the other, and I want to move this along and not feel like anyone's intentionally dragging their feet on this deal, because it's gone on for a long, long time.
may I say something?
Yeah.
I would recommend that we hear Alter Studio next week.
Mhm.
And then we make a decision on that, and we'll have an agenda item on.
Okay.
We can have a joint public meeting. We might as well go ahead and, if we don't do the public hearing for the council next week, then we've spent the money on the postage. It has to be mailed individually to every resident. We've spent that money and we'd have to do it again. So I would urge you to keep that on the schedule and let's do it. And you can, and then we're on the same page as P and Z because we will have heard the Alter Studio comments, and
Yeah,
then if
but
we
we're
want a
gonna-
joint meeting, we
We're
can
gonna
have
have to
it.
renotice the P and Z meeting in May anyway, and so I'm saying let's renotice it as a joint meeting again, so
I
that we
think you'll
can.
want to hear the consultant.
I'm not talking about canceling next week's meeting, Brooke.
Okay.
That's not what I'm saying.
All right.
I'm saying that we have our meeting next week, and then when P and Z hears it again in May, that they hear it at a joint meeting with us, so that we can talk with them about their concerns and have it reach some consensus and make a decision together.
That's a good idea. Now I understand.
No.
Just one thing.
No. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Will you have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor say
I'll
aye.
talk to you offline.
Aye.
Aye.
You are adjourned. Thank you, council.